Hey guys, welcome to CraterMania. I'm your host, the man they call Crater, and I'd like to welcome you all to part 2 of my Final Girls Week here in my 500 Movies in 2025 series. Uh, so for this episode, I'll be talking about movies number 107 through 112, I believe is what it is now. And since I went over how much I love Final Girls movies and slasher movies in general in part one, I thought I'd talk about something a little bit different. Um, and if you haven't seen part one of my Final Girls Week videos, be sure to go on my channel and check that out. Um, you don't really have to watch these in order. If you're watching now, that's fine. Stay with me, but be sure to go back and watch part one because they're totally different movies, not related to the ones I'm going to be talking about tonight. And I also just want to apologize, guys, for starting this a little late. Usually I start at 9 p.m. Eastern time with these videos, but just had kind of a little crazy weekend. So I was late, watching all these 6 movies that I'm covering tonight for part 2. So I just got finished watching the last movie that I'm going to be talking about later on in this video. And it was a good one. Believe me, it was one I'd never seen before, and I can't wait to talk about it. But the reason this weekend was kind of crazy was, in a good way, was I actually got to go to a convention in Lexington, Kentucky, which is the Lexington Comic and Toy Con. And so that ran from Thursday through today. But I only went yesterday. I went with a couple of friends of mine here that lives local to me. And yeah, we had a great time. And said it was just one day, but I got a lot accomplished in that day. And yeah, I met some really cool people. Got a few autographs. I didn't really pick up anything for myself from the vendors or anything. Um, but I did buy a couple gifts for my nephew and my son. Um, but yeah, like I said, I did meet some really cool people at the show. I thought I would go ahead and show you guys some photos from the convention, some of the people that I met. So first off, this first person was someone I've been waiting to meet for years and years and years. Ever since I found out what conventions were, like almost 20 years ago, this guy has always been on like my bucket list of people to meet. I consider him one of the greatest actors of all time, and though that's just my personal opinion, I feel like he's highly, highly underrated. Not enough people talk about this guy. I mean, he was in Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, Demon Knight, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I mean, just to name a few, he's been in tons and tons and tons of stuff over the years, and he's still working to this day. He was just in the new Salem's Lot remake, which was on I think Max or whatever. But this the guy I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and pull this picture up for you guys. Um, so William Sadler, there he is. I got to meet him yesterday, and he's a lot shorter than I thought he would be. But I mean, super cool guy, um, super friendly. Me and him did little quotes back and forth from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and that was super fun. And I was telling him about how my wife is a huge fan of him as well, and she's loved him since she was a little girl, and she possibly loves him more as an actor than what I do. And I was just so disappointed that my wife Candace couldn't went with me to meet him. But I'm hoping he gets picked up by another show that's local to us sometime soon, so that she can go with me and finally meet him. But it was just such an awesome experience meeting him, and really cool thing that happened while I was waiting in his line to meet him. The person in front of me went up, and it was that was their turn or whatever to meet him, and right as they were about to meet him, the table next to him was Alex Winter, who played Bill in Bill and Ted, and he starts yelling at William Sadler. He's like, Bill, Bill, come over here. And he's like, yeah. He's like, what's going on? And it's like, look who's here. And he William Sadler, he looked, he was trying to figure out who it was, and it was this lady that came up and was talking to Alex Winter, and he says to William Sadler, he says, "This is Missy from our movies." So Missy from the Bill and Ted movies actually showed up at Lexington Comic Con. That she wasn't advertised as a guest; it was there signing autographs or anything. But and I was like, "What the hell?" I was standing there, I was like marking out, like what is going on? This is freaking awesome. And so yeah, like I said, the lady that played Missy in the Bill and Ted movie, she just came there and like, but it turns I thought that she may have just came on her own just to see them because she knew they were going to be there. But it turns out she came there because another guest that was signing, Cam Clark, who was like a voice actor. He did the voice of Leonardo in the old Ninja Turtles cartoon from the late 80s, early 90s. Apparently, Cam Clark and the lady that played Missy and Bill and Ted are now dating, so she was there with him. So it just kind of worked out where her former co-stars from the Bill and Ted movies happened to be there as guests as well. Um, so I'm like standing there, like I'm watching this interaction between, you know, the lady that played Missy and then Alex Winter and William Sadler, and I think the lady's name that plays Missy is like Amy Slotch or something like that. It's Amy something like that. But anyway, I was just kind of watching this experience. I was like, "What? This is so awesome! Right? This is like a reunion that wasn't even advertised." And so William Sadler pulls out his phone and he tries to go like take a picture. Um, doing like a selfie that he's holding, of him and Alex Winter and Amy or Missy, whichever you want to call her. And I'm like, "Hey, do you want me to take the picture for you guys?" And Wim Sadler hands me his phone, and I take the picture for him, and it was super cool, man. I was like, "Holy shit, that just happened!" But and it was so like I said, it's so cool. And I just been waiting to meet William Sadler forever, and then something like that comes in as a bonus. Is just I loved it. Um, but I guess the next person that I met after him was Catherine Mary Stewart. You know her from Night of the Comet, Last Starfighter, Weekend at Bernie's, just to name a few. And I've met Catherine before. She was at a Horror Hound weekend in Indianapolis back in 2010. So, and it was in March of 2010 as well. So it was almost 15 years to the date between those two times that I met her. Um, and when I walked up to her, she thought that she recognized me. I was like, "There's no way she's recognized me. I mean, I haven't seen her in 15 years." And she's like, "I don't know. You have one of those faces like that. I know I've seen you before." And I was like, "Damn! If she remembers me after 15 years, she must have a hell of a memory." Um, but she's so super sweet. She always, she was back when I met her the first time, just as sweet this time. I talked with her like I did last time with more about Last Starfighter and stuff, and I actually got my Last Starfighter book signed by her because I already had it signed by Nick Castle and which is the director. And you also know Nick Castle as the original Michael Myers in John Carpenter's Halloween. But yes, he did direct Last Starfighter, and then Lance Guest that plays Alex. I had him sign it. They both signed it like years ago. But then here I finally got Catherine Mary Stewart in there as well because when I got Nick and Lance to sign it, it was after I had met Catherine Mary Stewart for the first time, and so I didn't have this book yet, but I was so glad to finally add her. And then we talked for a few more minutes, and she was so cool that she ended up giving me a second autograph of her for free. And I mean, such a super cool lady. If you're a fan of Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, Weekend at Bernie's, which they had a Weekend at Bernie's reunion at this con as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you go to conventions, you see her, I definitely recommend meeting her, taking the time out to meet her. Absolutely love her. Let's see. So the next one that I met, there's just two more guys, and then I'll get into the movie. So sorry, I just wanted to kind of tell you guys about my experience over the weekend. Um, I'm a big wrestling fan. You guys know I'm a huge wrestling fan. That's like one of the biggest thing for me in life is wrestling. And there were several wrestlers at this show in Lexington this weekend, and one of them, the one I'm about to show you, just on this past Friday, was announced that he's going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, and that's the total package. Lex Luger. So yeah, Lex. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Lex's past that's kind of controversial, and there's a lot of fans that will still like to talk trash on Lex and stuff because of just some things. And I'm not going to talk about those things, at least not today. But let me tell you something. Everybody makes mistakes, and people change, and people feel remorse for things. And let me tell you, I definitely get that sense with Lex. When I met him, he was really one of the coolest and nicest wrestlers I've ever met. And he took his time with me and talked with me. He was just, I mean, absolutely super cool. We talked about, him being inducted to the Hall of Fame. I talked to him about his feud with Yokozuna back in 1993 in the WWF. Um, just and he had his the US title there in front of him on the table to take with pictures. I mean, super friendly, super humble guy. Um, if you're a wrestling fan, and if you're a level-headed wrestling fan like myself, definitely meet Lex. If you get the chance, dude's a legend. I mean, dude is absolutely an iconic wrestler, and in the history of professional wrestling, and he absolutely deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And I'm so glad I got to meet him finally. And now, the last person that I met at Lexington Comic Con is also a wrestler, and I've met him before. I've met him back in 2014, but he wasn't in his gimmick when I met him. He was just wearing sunglasses, but I mean, and he announced that, I think earlier this year or late last year, I can't remember, that he was going to be doing his gimmick at conventions for the last time in 2025. And after that, he's retiring the gimmick um, for like photo opportunities and autographs and all that stuff. And this is my favorite wrestler of all time. This is my childhood hero. I mean, the icon, the man they call Sting. I mean, look at that. That has got to be one of my absolute favorite pictures that I've ever taken, because that dude is just the symbol of my childhood. I mean, it. I when I saw, because like I said, I met him before, and it was super cool. I was super nervous when I met him the first time. It was really brief interaction, but I loved it. I'll remember it forever. And Candace was with me that first time that I got to meet him. It was in New Orleans during WrestleMania 30 weekend. And but when I found out I was going to be able to meet him again, and this time he's going to be in gimmick, in makeup, and you see he's got the Sting shirt on and everything. So he's trying to do like as much as he can. And I mean, he doesn't have to do that. People would still go and meet him at these shows out of gimmick. But the fact that he does it shows that he does care about the fans as well. And me tell you, I stood in that guy's line for over 2 hours yesterday to meet him, in his gimmick. And it was absolutely worth it. The closer I got to the table, I was watching every interaction he had with these fans. And I was like, that dude is awesome. I mean, he is literally one of the coolest wrestlers I've ever met. I mean, he's my absolute favorite wrestler of all time. And I walked away completely satisfied. I showed him this photo. Um, I don't have it saved on this computer, so I'll have to show it to you guys at a later time. But this photo of me from when I was from 1996 when I was 10 years old. Back then there were no Sting costumes to buy at the store or online because there really wasn't any online. The internet was just kind of new at that time. Um, so my mom made me a Sting costume for Halloween that year, and my brother painted my face and everything. And this is Surfer Sting. This was before he was doing the Crow Sting stuff. And I showed that to him, and he laughed. He loved that. He absolutely loved it. And I was like, "Wow!" I mean, I can't believe I'm sorry I'm showing this to Sting. But yeah, man, it was just so cool. Like I said, that's my childhood hero. He's the reason I got into wrestling. Um, and yeah, what an experience. And he, and the year is definitely not over. We're just starting. It seems, I mean, it's March, but we're still. It feels like we're just starting 2025, and he's going to be doing these appearances throughout the rest of the year, in that full gimmick. So if you go to conventions, you love Sting, try to catch him. I mean, dude, he's. I waited over 2 hours, but like I said, it was worth it. Absolutely worth it, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. If I was at another show that he was doing the same thing at. Um, but guys, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys, just briefly about my little trip this past weekend to Lexington Comic and Toy Con. Um, you know, it's not like one of my favorite conventions to go to. I'm more I like the horror conventions a lot better than I do like regular comic conventions. Um, but it's a fun show, and I feel like it was really well organized yesterday. For everything that I seen, there's a lot of good vendors. Just made a couple new friends while I was like standing in lines and stuff. Um, just talked to several like-minded people that were wrestling fans, and just a really fun time, guys. So yeah, definitely, check out Lexington Comic Con next year. It's over this weekend, unfortunately, if you missed out on it, guys. But excuse me. But yeah, I mean, it'll be around next year as well in March of 2026. And then just check out the other conventions that's going on. I'm going to Horror Hound Weekend in 2 weeks. So I'm ready for that. I did a Horror Hound Weekend um little special video like last week or something. I can't remember when I did it. But but yeah, check that out if you haven't watched that. But yeah, I was just doing that to kind of help promote Horror Hound Weekend. It's coming up, and like I said, it's in well less than 2 weeks now. And when I did that video at the time, I went over the guest list and everything, but they have added a few more people since. They have Kevin Nash now, the wrestler Kevin, which I met Kevin a few times, and I don't know, I may go talk to him again. I don't know if I get an autograph or anything, but I'd at least like to go and talk to him. And they also added Henry Winkler. So, and we've met Henry Winkler as well in the past, but Candace, I think, was the only person that got anything signed by him when we met Henry Winkler before. Um, so I may have to get an autograph. Maybe something from the Water Boy, because that's probably one of my favorite roles of his. I liked when he worked with Adam Sandler a lot. Um, but all right, guys, I guess let's go ahead and get into what you guys are all probably here for. And that is the part two of my final girls week. And the first movie I covered this week, so just following on the heels of Scream, which was the last movie that I covered in part one of Final Girls Week. Here's another movie that was released a year after the original Scream in 1997, and it just, it also just arrived at this pivotal time for the horror genre, and that's I Know What You Did Last Summer. So the slasher craze of the 80s, had largely faded at this time, and horror was struggling to find a new voice. So Scream kind of revitalized that, when it came out, and people's eyes were back on horror again. And and this movie, it was directed by, I believe his name is Jim Gillespie. He played this significant role in really reviving this subgenre, by blending classic slasher tropes with this modern, I guess, teen sensibility. That's what was in the going on in the 90s. And Jim Gillespie, he was primarily known for his like television work at the time, and he hadn't previously helmed any kind of major horror feature, but he brought a competent and stylish like hand to the project, I think. And this movie was actually based on the 1973 novel of the same name by a lady named Lois Duncan. And the film adaptation kind of differs significantly from the book, but the book is a more suspenseful thriller that focuses on this like the hit and run incident and just the whole psychological toll that it takes on the characters. And screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who worked on the original Scream, this was fresh off the heels of the success of Scream, and he helped inject a really a dose of like self-aware slasher tropes, and that a more conventional horror story, and which transformed the story into the very familiar revenge driven story that we know today. um so anyway, the movie story unfolds with this group of like these seemingly carefree individuals, um that they're a group of friends that are celebrating the 4th of July in their this town in North Carolina called Southport. And their night kind of takes a wrong turn after this beach party that they have. And when they drive home, I mean, they've been drinking and all this stuff. They accidentally strike this person out in the road. And so panic starts to set in, and they're just kind of like freaking out by this fear of just kind of ruining their futures. And this the one guy's name is Barry. So Barry, he's kind of like the alpha male of the group. He takes charge, and after this kind of brief terrifying moment, where the victim appears to still be alive, they decide to dispose of the body into the ocean. Um, so the group, they make this pact to kind of keep this incident a secret, forever kind of binding them by this guilt and fear, I guess. Um, so fast forward 1 year later, and this promise of a fresh start, starts to crumble before them when Julie, she goes back home from her first year of college, and she receives this little threatening note that says, "I know what you did last summer," and and that message is kind of throws the group back into this nightmare from 1 year before that they tried to bury. And it shatters just their individual attempts to move on. So Julie, she's haunted by this accident, and just she starts feeling distant from Ray, who was her boyfriend, and he had abandoned his whole college plans, and he becomes a fisherman. Um, so this is, and he's the first to kind of feel the weight of this, I guess, unknown threat. Um, so driven by paranoia, I guess you could say, the group. Um, they start to reunite with one another and kind of figure out who knows their secret, and they're trying to figure out who's behind these notes. And their initial suspicion falls on this guy that they went to school with named Max, and because he when they were out on the road that night, he witnessed them on that night of the accident. Um, However, when Max turns up dead later in the movie, the mystery starts to deepen, and the threat is escalating. And they're like, okay, so it wasn't him. So who the fuck is it? Um, but as the days pass, this killer is continues to threaten and terrorize, and um, all the different friends in the group, and he starts to trying to pick them off one by one, just like the typical slasher movie, and so Barry, he's ambushed, and his car's stolen, and Helen has her hair cut off in her sleep, and then she feels like she's being stalked, and so and Julie, Julie, she discovers Max, which was the guy that was there that night, on the road with him. In this, and she discovers his body in this trunk of this car, and then well, later when she tries to show the rest of her friends, he's gone. So all the evidence stuff that starts to disappear is as quickly as it appears, and just kind of sending everything further into this the group into this kind of frantic search for answers, I guess. Um, so Julie's research, she starts doing research on the computer and stuff for like to kind of lead her to the person that's actually doing all this stuff. And her research leads her to believe that the victim's name was David Egan. Um, and so they think that's the person that he hit that night. So she and Helen, they decide to visit David's sister Missy, who mentions a friend of David's his friend's name was Billy Blue. So and Missy had told them that Billy Blue had came to pay his respects or whatever. Um, so as the upcoming Fourth of July celebration is starting to take fold in the town and everything, the violence starts to intensify with all these characters, and so Helen, she ends up witnessing Barry's murder at the beauty pageant during the celebration, and and soon after the police um, are placed with Helen to escort her home, and then that police officer is murdered, and then Helen's sister. She's also killed by this murderer when she run, and then when she's trying to run home in a panic, this killer just keeps growing closer and closer to him, and getting more and more violent. Um, so eventually, the truth behind the killer's identity is revealed in um, this sequence where Julie is starting to piece all the different pieces of the puzzle together, and the reveal is that the victim was not David Egan, but a man named Ben Willis, who ended up being this vengeful father of Susie Willis, who died in a car accident. And Ben Willis believed that David Egan was responsible for his daughter's death, and so Ben murdered him, and right after that was struck by the gr- the group of friends, Julie and her friends' car. So now 1 year later, he's healed from that, and he's back to, I guess, exact his revenge on those who left him for dead. And Julie learns that Ben Willis is the man that they at that point she learns that they hit. He was the man that they hit and threw into the ocean after Ben Willis had killed David Egan. So after the reveal, the final showdown takes place on Ben Willis's boat, which is named Sweet Susie. And this is where Julie discovers, the remains of Helen and Barry, and it solidifies the whole gravity of the threat that he has been placing on him. And Ray, he arrives to rescue Julie just in time, and he manages to get Ben Wills hooked up in this like whole rig on the boat, and it sends him up and cuts his hand off, and then it sends his body overboard. So after that happens, we think that's the end for the killer. The day is saved. Now we can rest. And the film offers this brief moment of relief as as Julie and Ray reconcile, and they believe that they have finally vanquished this killer. Um, but however, the film ends with this classic slasher cliffhanger. Um, because 1 year later, Julie is back in college, and she's attempting to try to live a normal life. But as she steps into the shower, she sees these chilling words kind of show up on the glass. It says, "I still know," and it's all written in the steam and everything on the glass. And right after that, this dark figure just smashes through the glass, and and just kind of leaves uh, Julie screaming and her fate unknown. But we would find out her fate just about a year or two later when the sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, came out. And I may, cover that at some point on the channel. But I just wanted to go ahead and start with the original, I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I thought another good reason to to cover that, because there has been some news lately about a reboot or maybe another sequel. I'm not really sure. They haven't been really clear on details about the new movie, but they have said there will be a new movie in the series for I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's rumors of Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt coming back for the new one as well. And let's go ahead and just talk about Julie and Ray and some of the other characters here. So Julie James, played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, Julie is the final girl, and she's arguably the emotional heart of the movie. Um, her character kind of grapples with this profound guilt and trauma after the whole accidental hit and run that sets the story in motion. And she embodies like the conscience of the group. And she's pushing for them to confess, and she's just constantly haunted by that event that took place. Then you have her boyfriend, then ex-boyfriend, whatever. It's on again, off again relationship between the two. Ray Bronson, played by Freddie Prinze Jr. Like I said, Ray is Julie's boyfriend, and then later they break up, whatever. But anyway, he's this working class guy who is just struggling, to kind of define his future, and he kind of carries his own burden of guilt. Initially agreeing with the group's decision to cover up the crime, but however, he later wrestles with his conscience and stuff, and his relationship with Julie. Um, and is an interesting character now, and he's like one of the red herrings for the movie, because there's a part in the story where it's believed that he is the one that is doing these killings. But next we have Helen Shivers, who's played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I think this is where Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. met, because they are married now. They've been married for several years, and they would work together later in like the Scooby Doo movies and all that. Um, but anyway, Helen, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's this local beauty queen, and she's probably the most ambitious of that group of friends. Um, Helen kind of represents this desire to escape that small town life that they all inhabit, and so initially she's motivated by like self-preservation and and just kind of protecting her image. But however, as this threat escalates, Helen proves to be surprisingly courageous and determined throughout the movie, especially in the her final moments in the movie where right before she's killed. So even though she's killed, we did get to see a little bit of character development with her, and she wasn't just seen. So she wasn't just seen as this prissy, goody two shoes type beauty queen chick. Um, and I love Sarah Michelle Gellar. I'll defend her. I'll die on that hill defending Sarah Michelle Gellar because Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite shows of all time. I love her, and there's also news of that show coming back too. I don't know where they're at with that, but like I'm excited. I just hope they don't screw it up. Um, so next we got the character Barry Cox, who is played by Ryan Phillip, I believe is how you pronounce it. Philip. I don't know, but anyway, he's got a punchable face, and Barry, he's this arrogant, hot-headed jock of the group, and he's a complete asshole, and he's just concerned primarily with his own well-being, and you just he's a jerk. I don't know why they would want to be friends with this guy, honestly. But Barry's role is to be the most, kind of physically imposing, tough guy, whatever. And just he's very confident, but he's also at the same time the most visibly shaken. So it feels like that whole tough guy persona that he has is just he's just trying to cover up that he's actually scared about what happened, with the accident, and then a year later, these notes coming through, and just all the threats and all that. So he's definitely in fear of what's happening. And then of course the killer himself, the fisherman Ben Willis, who's played by Muse Watson, and I think Muse Watson, I think they just announced him for like Chiller Theater Convention or something like that. I think it's going to be his first appearance at a convention, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder. I don't even know how old that guy is now because he seemed like he was kind of old when they did. I Know What You Did Last Summer. So I don't know. That's interesting though that he's starting to do conventions now at the age he is. But anyway, he's the killer of this story, and he stalks the group with his iconic hook and his fisherman garb, which they call it a slicker in the movie. I guess maybe that's what they're called in real life too. I don't know anything about fishing, so you're asking the wrong guy. But he represents this kind of embodiment of their past sins, and that where they, kind of the hit and run thing where they, and he's returned to exact revenge on this group and punish them for for just kind of leaving him for dead. But I mean, we later learned that he kind of deserved it because he killed David Egan. But anyway, there's this mystery that throughout the movie that kind of surrounds his identity, and the motivations keeps the audience kind of guessing throughout the whole movie because we have red herrings like Max and we had Ray, but then that's everything keeps getting foiled and we're like, okay, so it's not them. Who is it? And you know, there's really no reason for the audience to believe that it was Ben Willis because we didn't really know who Ben Willis was until the end of the movie. So I love that about it. I love that it wasn't predictable, like who the killer was, and we don't really even know who that guy is until the end. And I just think that kind of um, really defined the genre for slashers, in the '90s. Because both it and Scream, I think these are um, two of the best slashers to come out of the '90s that kind of helped reinvent the horror genre. Um, and to talk about some of my favorite memorable moments from the movie. I got to talk about the opening scene with Typo Negative's Summer Breeze. So Typo Negative is one of my favorite bands of all time, and the opening of the movie is just kind of this crane shot over the ocean, going into like the rocks, and it's playing the cover of Summer Breeze by Typo Negative, and it just that to me is one of my favorite parts in the whole movie, just because I love Typo Negative, and because their music has this really dark and unsettling tone with all of their songs, and um, it I feel like that was a perfect choice to open up a horror movie with, and I feel like Typo Negative's music should be in a lot more horror movies, just because it is. They just have this really creepy sound, and if you're a Typo Negative fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And because it just kind of like throws into this kind of seemingly carefree summer vibe, but with a sense of dread. You know what I mean? And I love it. I absolutely love that. Um, but I guess the accident itself. I mean, this is definitely memorable. I mean, the it's the pivotal moment in the movie that kind of sets the tone for everything that happens afterwards. It's the frantic decision making, the panic, just the attempts to cover it up that that are all kind of effectively portrayed by these characters, and it just kind of establishes that core conflict. And yeah, I mean that the whole accident itself is probably the most memorable thing in the whole movie because it's what the movie is based around. Um, and of course the notes, the threatening notes that the killer is sending to them, just you when they first start getting these, it just it's a catalyst, I guess, for the story. Um, because that's just that simple message. I know what you did last summer. It's just kind of like, chilling and mysterious. And it just effectively kind of throws the characters and the audience into this kind of spiral of fear and paranoia. Um, but to talk about some of the death scenes, I mean, there's not a whole lot uh, of death scenes in this movie. As far as when the characters go, like I want to say there is one, two, three, four, five, six, like 6 or 7 deaths altogether in this movie. But the ones I just want to kind of focus on a couple of the more main character deaths, which especially Barry and Helen. So the deaths of Barry and Helen are I mean they're pretty. I mean they're not like over the top, crazy, super memorable deaths, but I mean it's just they're memorable to me because those were two of the main characters, and it kind of just it continued the intenseness, I guess, is that a word? Intenseness of the story that was being told. Um, because Barry's murder that's on the balcony that's during the beauty pageant, and then when Helen is trying to escape, and ultimately she gets caught in like this alley that leads out to the street where they're having this Fourth of July parade, and but there's all these like stacks of tires for some reason in this dark alley, and with all the noise and the fireworks going off and all that, Ben Willis catches Helen and um, just murders her with his hook hand or whatever in that alley. Um, and that's it was that if I'm talking about what's the most memorable out of those two, it's definitely Helen's death because it's just she got so close to safety and freedom, but I mean she just missed it, and then and then she's killed. Um, Then okay, so then there's the cliffhanger ending of this movie. So when Julie, after they think that the killer is dead, everything, she's safe, she's back at college, everything's fine. that final shower scene with Julie where she just sees the words "I still know" appearing in the steam. It's a classic horror cliffhanger, and definitely memorable, and it just kind of amps you up. Oh, what happened? Did she get killed? Is there going to be a sequel? And it just leaves the audience on the edge of their seat, and just just sets the stage, for the sequel. And I like the sequel, but I don't think it's as good as the original one. And then I think there was like a third one called "I Always Know What You Did Last Summer" or something like that, but I've never seen that one. It seems like it came out like not that long ago. Doesn't seem like that long ago that one came out. It was like a direct to video thing, I think, direct to DVD, Blu-ray. I don't even know if it came out on Blu-ray, but I know it is on DVD. But I've never seen it. I don't really have much interest in it. Since it doesn't feature any of the original characters or actors. But it has piqued my interest that they are talking about rebooting the uh the series or making another sequel or whatever, and they're bringing back Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt. So I'll definitely be checking that out once it is released or whatever. Um, but anyway, I know what you did last summer. It it got some moderately good success at the box office, and I think it proved, though, like with the success that it did have, it proved that the slasher genre wasn't dead. Um, and it kind of helped reignite that interest in the slasher subgenre, and just it paved the way for this kind of wave of similar like films that were aimed at a teen audience, featuring like popular young actors, and just incorporating all these like contemporary issues and just trends into the story. So and its success along with Scream and like Urban Legend, which is the next movie I'll be talking about. Um, it just proved that there was still a market for these mass killers that were stalking all these teens and young adults and all that. And I know what you did last summer. It may not be a groundbreaking masterpiece or anything, but I think it does remain an important film for horror in the 1990s, um, because its success contributed to that late 90s slasher revival and the whole final girl aspect for a new generation. And it's just it's left a lasting impact, I think, on pop culture because with the news of a remake or reboot or sequel or whatever it's going to be, I mean, I definitely, there's interest there. It seems still, and it may not offer like revolutionary scares or character development that much or anything. It's this blend of like teen angst and the suspenseful atmosphere and kills is what really makes it memorable and an enjoyable entry, I think, in that 90s slasher genre. Um, and it just goes to prove that the legacy of this, sometimes the legacy of this, that it goes to prove that sometimes secrets you bury can come back to haunt you. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, I'm excited to hearing some news for stuff like that because I loved this movie in the '90s when it came out. I remember watching it with my mom and dad, and they liked it as well. And my mom's not real big on horror movies, but she did like this one. But moving on, I guess I'll go to the next movie, and that's Urban Legend that came out a year later in 1998. And it just, like I said, about same as I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, it arrived amidst the kind of late 90s slasher revival, which was spearheaded by Scream. And while this one wasn't as critically acclaimed, I love this one. I love this one even more than I Know What You Did Last Summer. Maybe not as much as Scream, but this is definitely one of my favorite horror movies from the late '90s. And like I said, it wasn't critically acclaimed or anything, but it kind of carved out its own niche, like group of people that love this movie, right? Because it cleverly like weave these popular urban legends into kind of a whodunit slasher, and it just offers a like suspenseful and just kind of often gruesome, scenes throughout the movie that both like entertains and preys on just like this fascination with the scary stories. And the film was directed by Jamie Blanks, and it marked his directorial debut, I'm pretty sure. Um, and the screenplay was written by I think Silvio Horta or something like that. But anyway, the origins of the movie are kind of rooted in this kind of resurgence of the slasher genre, and just this, and it's also kind of mixed with this desire to explore this. Um, like these urban legend stories that people know in the real world, that that are kind of popular, and they they write books about it and stuff, and that's kind of talked about in the movie as well. Um, so the movie just kind of aims to tap into that collective like cultural understanding of these stories, and it uses them as this kind of framework for a the bloody mystery that we're watching here. Um, so, as the story for this movie goes, urban legend kind of unfolds at this college. I think it's called like Pendleton University or something like that. And there's this series of murders that begin to kind of terrorize this campus. And the film really wastes no time setting the scene because it opens up with um, this gruesome like decapitation of this student named Michelle Mancini, and because this killer was hiding in the back seat of her car, and it kind of that serves as kind of this chilling like opening or whatever to the carnage that will follow. So the story centers around this the main character's name is Natalie Simon, and she's not like your typical final girl and all this. But she's played by Alicia Witt, and she becomes, increasingly disturbed as these deaths, start to come into the news and everything, especially of Michelle Mancini, who was one of her good friends. And when they feel that fuels her anxiety, because this campus chatter from her friends and stuff are they're like talking about these urban legends and stuff because they take this class under a professor named Professor Wexler, played by Robert Englund, who's trying to debunk all of these urban legends. Um, and there's her one friend, Parker Riley. He it shows him he's like entertaining his friends with these different stories of the Stanley Hall massacre, which was a gory thing that happened like years ago, supposedly on campus. Um, and Paul Gardner, who's played by Jared Leto, he's like this journalism student, so he initially is like dismissing these stories, and he doesn't believe there's any kind of truth in them or anything. Um, but the next day, Michelle Mancini's murder starts to spread through the campus, and Dean Adams and the campus officer Reese Wilson, they're trying to like cover this up and bury these stories of the murder and all that. So then another student, a person part of the friend group named Damon Brooks, he ends up finding Natalie, who is disturbed by the news of this murder, and he tries to cheer her up. So in this scene where they go out into like the woods or whatever, and they're parked in this car, Damon's trying to he's trying to flirt and basically he's trying to get into the pants of Natalie, but she ends up rejecting him. And so Damon goes outside the car, and while he's outside the car taking a piss, he ends up getting attacked by somebody in a hooded parka, and he was hung from this tree. And when Natalie tries to go get help, the the rope that has been hanging him over the tree is tied to the back of the car, so it's lifting him up further into the tree. And so at this point, Damon's body and the car have kind of disappeared when she arrives. When Officer Reese, she brings Officer Reese back out there to show where he'd been hung, and then he crashed down through the windshield of the car, but he's no longer there at that point when she brings Reese out there. Um, and as more students start to fall victim to these killings, and that kind of mirror these popular urban legends, and Natalie becomes certain that there's something weird going on here. And she has this roommate. She's a goth girl named Tosh, who's played by Danielle Harris, and she ends up getting strangled to death. So after she discovers her death, Natalie, she finds this bloody message on the wall. It says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" or something like that. And so she tells her friend Brenda that that she and Michelle got probation for causing this accident, years ago, after they were driving with their headlights off, and just kind of playing this like urban legend type game with this driver who'd flashed them. Um, and it ends up being this guy that and so she's been living with that, that thinking that she got this guy killed. So Paul, he starts to investigate and finds that the Stanley Hall massacre, did actually occur, and it had Professor Wexler as the sole survivor of the massacre. So that's when we're start to led to believe that Wexler is possibly the killer here. And then next we find Dean Adams. He's murdered in the campus parking garage. And when Officer Reese goes to Wexler's office, it's all disorganized and covered in blood, but there's like no bodies or anything to be found in there. Um, and meanwhile, while this is happening, Parker is putting on having this fraternity party that kind of coincides with the 25th anniversary of the Stanley Hall massacre, and so the killer ends up catching Parker in the bathroom at his own party, and murders him by forcing pop rocks and these bathroom chemicals down his throat. Um, so Next, Tara Reid's character in the movie, Sasha, she leaves the party, early on to kind of go to the campus radio station to host her late night talk show, and um, while she's there, the killer attacks her as well, and her assistant, and with these like screams, her screams being played live on the air. So Natalie then rushes to the station and witnesses this killer murdering Sasha with an axe. And then after this, Natalie then runs into Paul. Then she runs into Brenda. And so that's when the audience starts making more assumptions and questioning, like, okay, where was this? Where was Paul? Where was Brenda? So there's all these, red herrings, and just where you're not sure exactly who is causing these killings. But still at this point, Natalie is still convinced that Wexler is the killer. So along the way, they leave to kind of try to alert the police of what's they think that Wexler is behind this. They stop at this gas station, and they they start to get out of the car, and they go and check in the trunk for I can't remember what they're looking for. To be honest with you, but they open the trunk, and Wexler's body is in the trunk. Now, at this point, Natalie and Brenda freaked out. They run through the woods towards the campus as Paul starts to follow them. So they end up getting separated, and Natalie tries to flag down this janitor who works at the campus as he's coming down the road. He ends up picking her up, but he starts kind of acting weird and stuff, and Natalie starts to think, well, maybe this janitor is the killer now because of just the way he's acting. Um, but then something happens and the killer ends up forcing the car off the road, and the crash the kills the janitor, and Natalie gets out and she has to run away on foot. Um, so Natalie gets back to Stanley Hall, and she finds Brenda, and Brenda's in there screaming inside of Stanley Hall. And then as she's screaming, Natalie's trying to find her, and she starts running to all these different dead bodies of like Damon and Wexler and Sasha, um, and and then she sees Brenda is like strapped to this bed, so. And she's not moving. She's not sure if she's like knocked out or she's dead at this point, but she just knows that she just heard her scream right before that. Um, so as Natalie starts to freak out and panic, she kind of crouches down and is kind of very visibly emotionally upset. And then that's when Brenda comes to and knocks Natalie unconscious. So when she awakens, Brenda reveals that she is the killer. And the reason her motive was that because she was acting out of revenge for her fiance and her high school sweetheart, David, who was the person in the accident that Natalie and Michelle caused. So Brenda, she attempts to pull another urban legend by removing Natalie's kidney. But at that time, Reese arrives and holds Brenda at gunpoint. So Brenda ends up stabbing Reese with a switchblade, and then Paul arrives, and Natalie starts to kind of gain control of the gun and ends up shooting Brenda, who goes out the window. And then Natalie and Paul drive away to get Reese some help because Reese does survive after she got, you know, pretty much stabbed with that switchblade. And then just, Natalie and Paul, they discuss how this will later be an urban legend and all the facts will be misconstrued. Just like, how urban legends usually are. So Paul asks then, well, if this is an urban legend, where's the twist? And that's when Brenda then reappears in the back seat and attacks him with an axe. Then Paul crashes the car on a bridge, causing Brenda to go through the windshield and down into the river below. And then right when you think everything's good and everything's going to be fine, and it's because now the end of the movie. It shows much later a new group of students at a different university are recounting these events of what happened with the killer at the other campus with Brenda's killing spree, during which they say that her body was never discovered. And most of them kind of don't believe the story, and except for this one woman who is end up revealing to be Brenda, and she claims that the story has been told wrong, and she begins explaining how the story really goes. And that sets up for a sequel, which there was a couple different sequels of the urban legend, but I still think to this day that the original urban legend from 1998 is definitely the best one. Um, and like I said, one of my favorite horror movies from the 90s. Um, so to look at a little closer look at some of these characters, Natalie Simon, who's played by Alicia Witt, she is the central main character here, who is seen as the final girl, but she's not really like your typical final girl, but she's haunted by her past, and she's kind of forced to confront this present horror that's going on now with all these killings, and she's kind of the audience's like entry point into this whole mystery. That she kind of drives this whole investigation, and she represents that vulnerability that makes her a target. Um, and then you have her friend Brenda Bates, who ends up being the killer in all this. She's played by Rebecca Gayheart, who's actually from my neck of the woods. and that's I always thought that was really cool. Actually, when I was working at Walmart once, she actually came in, was in the break room because she was friends with some of the people that worked there at that Walmart. So I was like, "Holy shit! I wish I had my urban legend poster with me, and I'd have her sign it." But all jokes aside, though, like I mean, she's a I think she was a fantastic actress, in this, Jawbreaker, all kinds of stuff. I know there was some little bit of controversy that I won't go into because I think it's kind of stupid, but yeah, there was some stuff on her that happened a long time ago, and ironically, it kind of like ties into some of the events in urban legend. So, but if you want to look that up, you can Google that for yourself. I don't really care to talk about that stuff because it's too drama filled for me. But anyway, Brenda, she's supposedly this like supportive friend who at the same time kind of harbors this dark secret, and her transformation into the killer is really the movie's most central twist because it highlights that theme of like revenge and just these like hidden dangers that lurk beneath the surface of a person. um then Paul Gardner, who's played by Jared Leto, he's like that skeptical journalist who initially just dismisses the urban legends, but eventually he's drawn into Natalie's investigation of what's going on with these killings. So he kind of provides this kind of grounded perspective, and he's like a voice of reason. But ultimately, he becomes a target of this killer, just like everybody else. Um, then you have Damon Brooks, who's played by Joshua Jackson. He is kind of the like, frat guy who's a prankster and ends up having this kind of shocking death, one of the most memorable deaths I think in the movie, and it kind of serves as a turning point in the movie, which kind of starts to escalate the danger more and more, and just proving that really no one is safe in this type of situation. Then you have Sasha Thomas, who's played by Tara Reid. She's that kind of sassy and popular girl who's this radio host on campus, and just she ends up having this brutal on-air murder, that's broadcasted out to everyone, and it just kind of that her death kind of underscores the film's like self-aware horror, much like how a lot of self-aware horror was present in Scream. So. Um, I thought that she was an interesting character. I mean, she's not featured that much throughout the movie, but I mean, I think it was that's she definitely has a memorable death in all of it. Then you have Parker Riley, who's played by Michael Rosenbaum. He's just like this kind of over the top guy that's that and he's obsessed with these urban legends, and he ends up having probably also one of the most memorable deaths in the movie as well. Um, with the pop rocks and the bathroom chemicals and all that. It's just so it just kind of comes ironic, as an ironic consequence of his knowledge of these urban legends. Um, and then Professor Wexler, who's played by Robert Englund, he was this survivor of that real urban legend of this Stanley Hall massacre years and years ago. And so his presence in the movie kind of adds this layer of mystery and just kind of a historical context, I guess, to the movie's events. Um, and then, of course, there's Officer Reese Wilson, who's played by Loretta Devine, and I love her character, especially when she's watching like the Pam Grier movies and she's trying to imitate everything that Pam Grier's doing. Um, she's kind of this like sympathetic campus police officer, security guard, whatever, who's she has this investigation going that's constantly like covered up and buried by her and the dean, and it just kind of highlights this kind of if the efforts that are like real life institutions would cover up the truth, because there's that stuff like that is known to really happen in real life, because if an incident occurs, then a company or a school or whatever will try to cover it up, so there's no drama surrounding the institution. Um, but aside from just the characters itself being memorable, there's definitely I have my own favorite memorable moments from the movie. The opening scene at the gas station, really sets the tone with this kind of dark and suspenseful atmosphere, and it kind of immediately establishes the film's focus on these urban legends and creates this like sense of just of the audience being uneasy. So that eerie type vibe that is at the gas station, combined with this kind of ominous figure that's lurking in the background, um, it just kind of it builds the anticipation for all the horror to come. And I love that scene as well because the gas station attendant is played by Brad Dourif, and his character in the movie, I think, is named Michael McDonald. But I always, when I was younger, I always thought they were saying Michael McDonald, like the musician from the Doobie Brothers. Um, but that's such a underrated role. I mean, it's a very short role for Brad Dourif, but I think he does a absolutely killer job of no pun intended. But he does a killer job, and that because he has like this kind of stutter and everything. So the girl, Michelle Mancini, thinks that he's trying to hurt her, but he's actually trying to save her because he sees that there's somebody hiding in her back seat that was going to kill her. So yeah, Brad. Even though it's very short, it's a very cool role for Brad Dourif. Um, Another memorable moment for me is Damon's trick with the pop rocks. So um, this Professor Wexler, played by Robert Englund, he like I said, he hosts this this class at the campus where he's trying to debunk these urban legends. So Damon participates in this experiment of Professor Wexler's, where he takes these pop rocks and eats them and drinks them with Coke. Because that's a very well known urban legend, and there for years they even talk about this in the movie that the Life cereal commercials with Mikey likes it. Supposedly that guy uh, died from his like stomach exploding or something from eating pop rocks and coke, but which of course is just an urban legend because that guy didn't die from that. He went on to live and everything, and he became an adult. So that was all bullshit. But like I said, he tests the experiment, and this also kind of foreshadows Parker's death later in the movie. Um, but yeah, like of course this is just a prank from Damon. He's just messing with Professor Wexler and everybody in the class. Um, and but yeah, like I said, that scene was mostly there just for kind of foreshadowing what was to come. And then you have Damon's death, where he was hanging from the tree. So this is kind of a visibly shocking and disturbing scene that it really marks that shift in the story. And it also just solidifies the killer's commitment to just kind of recreating these urban legends and raises the stakes for just all these other remaining characters. Um, so that image of his body hanging against in the sky amongst the trees, and then as it comes crashing down into the windshield of the car in front of Natalie, um, I mean, I don't know. That's one of the most memorable things to me from whenever I watched this movie, especially, I was like 12 years old, I think, when I first watched this movie. So it kind of just stuck with me. And then you got Tosh, who was played by Daniel Harris. Uh, you know, her death when because she's Natalie's roommate, and it's kind of a claustrophobic and I don't know, very terrified because the after Natalie discovers her body and she's been killed, she sees this like bloody message on the wall that kind of adds to the horror of all that. and it just it emphasizes that that personalized nature of the attacks and this kind of psychological torment that's inflicted on Natalie. Um, but I'm going to tell you what the most memorable thing in this movie for me is, and it's very disturbing. They don't actually show um, this what I'm about to talk about, but just the idea of it is very disturbing to me, and that is when Parker is at the frat party. This is right before Parker's death, but he is on this call with someone, um, and they're like, he says something about his dog or something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it turns out the dog um, is then put into the microwave. So there's some kind of urban legend about the old lady's dog being put in the microwave. So Parker's dog is he goes down and opens the microwave and there's like blood everywhere and like um, so supposedly they put his dog in the microwave and that just kind of like traumatized me when I was a kid. Just the idea of that, even though it doesn't show anything, it's just the idea of it is very disturbing. Um, and then, of course, then right after that, Parker's death with the pop rocks and the cleaning chemicals. Definitely another memorable moment. Same with Wexler's body being found in the car trunk, and then of course at the end, Brenda being revealed as the killer, and just all the dead bodies that Natalie finds right before Brenda's revealed as the killer. Um, it just that whole reveal of Brenda's motive and just the discovery of all those different corpses up there with her is is just very wild, and it's cheesy also in a way, but it just kind of shows that this movie was just trying to pay tribute to those cheesy '80s slashers, and we get a sense of that by their by them including several uh, classic '80s slasher icons like Robert Englund, Brad Dourif, Danielle Harris. So yeah, I love this movie. Like I said, it's one of my favorite horror movies from the late '90s, and it's not like a groundbreaking masterpiece, either, but it has. I think it's very made a very notable like impact on horror, especially horror in the '90s. Um, and the movie it helped kind of solidify this use of urban legends as a kind of a rich source of horror material for future projects, and it demonstrated how these stories would kind of deeply ingrained in our collective um our conscious. It could be modernized, and you know what I mean, and just used to kind of create these effective scares throughout the story. Um, and just the whole final girl trope. Well, Natalie, like I said, she's not your like typical final girl. But it does the movie does kind of feature this strong, female lead with her, in that part, who's just forced to confront this killer. Um, and also, just that inclusion of a whole kind of masked or disguised killer, that's stalking this college campus just during a time period when slashers were reemerging in popularity. Just it makes the film, I think, a notable entry in that whole genre revival. Um, and I guess in conclusion, Urban Legend is just this, it's a fun and suspenseful slasher that just, I think successfully combines both the thrill of a whodunit with, that chilling nature of just urban legends. Um, and while it might not be the most original or thought provoking horror film or whatever, I just think it offers a really solid dose of 90s, entertainment, and just it just kind of taps into that fear of these stories that we tell each other, and like if you're like campfire stories and stuff. Um, and I think it's definitely worthwhile. To watch for fans that are of the horror genre, the slasher genre, and just just anybody that's kind of interested in that whole late '90s mentality. So yeah, definitely check out Urban Legend if you've never seen it. Like I said, I absolutely love it, and I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched it throughout my life. But I guess moving on to the next movie. So fast forward a little bit in time. Now we're going to 2005, and this movie is definitely not just horror, but one of my favorite movies of all of the 2000s. Like I said, this was released in 2005, and this is The Descent. This movie for me is absolutely unforgettable because like it is one of the like scariest movies that I've probably ever seen, but just because of the idea of it. Um, Not the whole creature feature aspect, but just the idea of just going exploring these caves that you don't really know anything about, and potentially getting lost and trapped, and just I mean that could definitely be something that could happen in real life. And that's the kind of horror that always scares me the most, is that stuff that could really happen to you, and it's terrifying to me. So so it's these types of horror movies that scare me the most. So it's just kind of and this with the descent and everything that happens in it, it's just kind of one of those movies that, like I said, it's unforgettable. It just kind of is burned into your brain, and it stays there. Um, and it was directed by Neil Marshall, and he's just that guy is a master of horror in my opinion, because of the suspense and the whole claustrophobia and just that kind of primal fear, I guess you could call it. It's elevated by all these strong female characters, and there's this awesome visual design that's in the movie. Um, and Neil Marshall, he was known for his kind of gritty and that gritty style that he had. It's and he was just the mastermind behind this whole movie. So before this movie, had kind of gained recognition for his like low budget stuff, but but I mean, and it's one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time, Dog Soldiers. So Neil Marshall did Dog Soldiers back in 2002, which is just 3 years before this movie came out, and so he ended up drawing inspiration from like all these classic creature features and survival horror, and so he made this movie that kind of felt both unique and kind of referential to those classic creature features. Um, and he wanted to create a horror movie that centered around all these female characters, which is kind of move away from like the typical horror tropes of kind of these of the mixed genders, where there's a lot, there's male characters or female characters, but in this case, we're just it focuses on all female characters, and it also just he wanted to explore all these different themes of like grief and betrayal, and just these females being resilient in these extreme circumstances. Um, so the movie kind of opens up with this like adrenaline fueled like situation where they're going whitewater rafting, and so on this trip, there's these characters Sarah and Juno and Beth, who are going to be our three main characters for this movie that we're going to be talking about. There are these three close friends who are just kind of bound by this shared love for adventure. And this lighthearted scene kind of is brutally shattered when shortly after, as they're leaving to go back to the hotel, Sarah and her husband Paul and their daughter Jessica. Um, so Paul and Jessica are there. There's this accident happens, and this like pole goes through the windshield and impales both Paul and Jessica and then it leaves Sarah in the hospital, and it just also, it leaves her just emotionally shattered and just traumatized from this event. So 1 year later, Sarah, she's still struggling with this loss of her husband and her daughter. She reunites with her friends Juno and Beth and these three other girls named Sam, Rebecca, and Holly. And so Sam is a medical student, and Rebecca is Sam's sister, and then Holly is just this friend that is kind of a thrill seeker, much like how the rest of the girls are, and she's just this new friend to the group, and she's supposed to be like, I think Juno's like protege or something like that. So anyway, Juno has organized this like trip to where they go into the Appalachian Mountains, and I don't know if they ever say like what state it's in because I'm from Appalachia. I live in the Appalachian Mountains in Kentucky, but the Appalachian Mountains kind of like goes all the way up, on the northeast. So it could be like Tennessee, it could be West Virginia, North Carolina. I don't know, but I don't. I just know in the beginning when they're going on this trip, it just shows across the Appalachian Mountains. Um, and like they're going in the car and they're like listening to this like banjo music, and then they switch the station, and it's like a preacher on the radio and stuff, and so they're just kind of like making fun of that, and it's stereotyping the area where I'm from in the Appalachian Mountains, but I thought it was funny. I always thought that was kind of comical. But like I said, they're going on this trip, to just kind of to try to take Sarah's mind off of what happened a year before all that, and just kind of help her heal and reconnect with life. So the group ends up hiking to this kind of seemingly like ideal mountain cave entrance. But as they descend, this kind of initial exhilaration starts to fade when this explosion seals off their entry point. So Juno ends up revealing to them this shocking truth that she deliberately led them into this uncharted like cave system that had never been discovered. No one had ever been down there before, and it was just a far more challenging exploration for their group because they wanted to be she wanted them to be the first one to discover it and map it out and just like name it after them and all that. Um, so this whole reckless decision, eliminates any kind of chance of rescue and just plunges the group into this kind of desperate fight for survival to see how they're going to get out of this cave. Um, so as they're starting to kind of like navigate all these different tunnels of the cave and stuff, it's very claustrophobic and stuff. And if you're a person that's claustrophobic, then this movie is really going to freak you out. Um, but as they're doing this and they're kind of failing to find a way out here, their hopes kind of starts to dwindle, and that's when they discover this old climbing equipment and these cave paintings that kind of hint at a potential exit for them, but it kind of also suggests there's this kind of hidden, terrifying history in this cave. So Holly, who was kind of she sees this kind of glint of light in the distance, and so she's drawn to it, and so she rushes ahead, ends up falling and breaking her leg. And while the other girls are tending to her, there's this they one look. I can't remember if it's Rebecca or who it was, but she looks over and she kind of sees this glimpse of this pale, like humanoid creature, and that's when they sense that they're not alone. They're not alone in this cave. So there's something else here. And soon after this, the group is then uh, attacked and pretty much ripped apart by these things called crawlers that the movie calls crawlers, but they don't ever really call them that in the movie or anything. But I think that's just what maybe the fans or that was addressed by like the filmmakers that these things were called crawlers. But anyway, these crawlers are these like kind of grotesque looking, um, pointy eared. They almost look like the orcs or goblins from Lord of the Rings. And I don't know if they don't have eyes. I can't really tell, but I know that, but they can't see because it's all like everything's in the dark. And they kind of like adapted to that and just I guess evolved over time. But they look like I don't know, they're like troglodytes or something. I'm not sure, but they're just a really unique looking creature. And like I said, it's just adapted to this darkness that they live in. And Holly ends up being brutally killed by these creatures. Her throat is torn out. So Sarah, tries to get away from this. She ends up falls into this kind of deep pit and then is knocked unconscious. So in all this chaos that's happening, Juno she starts desperately trying to fight off this crawler that's attacking Holly's body, and then after she fights off that creature, um, someone appears behind her, which she thinks is another one of the creatures as she comes around. And accidentally impales Beth through the neck with her pickaxe. So of course, she's overcome with shock and guilt. So, but Juno ends up abandoning Beth's body and just leaving her to die. Um, then, after this happens, Sarah awakens from being unconscious after her fall, and um, she finds herself in this kind of like area of the cave that's littered with like human and animal remains and blood everywhere. Um, and she actually witnesses the crawlers in this area that are eating Holly's corpse. And it just kind of at that point solidifies this kind of nightmarish reality of their situation. um, and Juno, at the same time, elsewhere in that cave, discovers all these markings from like past explorers and indicate that possible path, but kind of reinforcing that deadly nature of the cave. And she finds Sam and Rebecca and saves them from a crawler. And then she reveals where to them where she had found these cave markings, and but she's unwilling to look for Sarah until Sam convinces her. So Sarah, she then discovers this, injured Beth, who was thought to be dead at this point. And so she stays alive long enough to reveal that Juno has betrayed Sarah because she was cheating with her husband, Paul. And Beth hands Sarah Juno's pendant, which was a gift from Paul, which confirms Sarah's suspicions that Juno and her husband were having this affair. Um, so so Beth begins to plead after this with Sarah for this mercy killing, and just torn by all this grief and rage, Sarah just kind of reluctantly obliges to Beth's request and just ends Beth's suffering by smashing her head with a rock. Um, and after this, it's kind of Sarah goes through this transformation, but she's continuously going through this transformation. But it's this, but after she's forced to kind of end Beth's suffering, she goes through this transformation to what we consider, the final girl transformation in these movies. And so she just kind of unleashes this kind of brutal onslaught against these crawlers, and to where she ends up fighting with one in this huge pool of blood. And then she emerges from this, pool of blood transformed into this kind of primal warrior. And it's definitely one of the most memorable parts of the movie, and enough to where that image was placed on all the posters and the Blu-ray DVD covers and all that stuff. All the marketing for the movie was done with that image. um, and it's a very awesome image, to and like I said, this is one of my favorite movies from the 2000s. And but anyway, Juno and Sam and Rebecca are after the whole transformation with Sarah. Juno, Sam, and Rebecca are ambushed by this other horde of these crawlers, and Sam ends up getting killed as she's attempting to like do this impossible climb over this little gap in the cave, and then Rebecca is dragged away and devoured by one of these crawlers, um, and but Juno is able to escape. So then Juno then meets up with Sarah finally, and she lies to Sarah about Beth's death, but Sarah already knows the truth because she found Beth's body when Beth was still alive. So kind of after fighting their way through this other group of crawlers, and they're potentially about to find an exit, Sarah then confronts Juno by showing her the pendant that was given to her by Paul, and that Beth had given to Sarah. And it's then, that revelation of Beth's fate to Juno, and she knows that Sarah knows about the affair. So Sarah ends up taking the pickaxe and wounding Juno in the leg with the pickaxe, and it's kind of leaving her fate to be there within the cave with this swarm of crawlers. Um, and beyond this, Sarah, she seemingly escapes the cave, uh, finally finding sunlight and and getting to her car and escaping this hellish nightmare. Um, but then it's then revealed that the twist of the cruel twist of it all is Sarah. She sees this like disturbing hallucination of Juno sitting beside her in the car, and that's when she kind of snaps out of it and she awakens back in the cave, and just revealing that kind of her escape was nothing more than just this, a desperate dream, I guess. Um, and there is a sequel to this movie. There is the Descent Part Two, but I still haven't watched it. I need to watch that eventually and just see if it because I don't know anything about it. And I'm curious to know like what happens because with that the way the first movie ends, like does it pick up directly from the ending of the first one in the second one? But I'll watch that at some point and definitely give you guys my thoughts on it. So to take a closer look at some of these main characters, Sarah, who's played by Shauna McDonald, she's the main character here, and our final girl. So she's initially, vulnerable and grief stricken because of the situation that happened at the death of her husband and her daughter. Um, but once she's kind of put into this situation where her and her friends go into this cave, she just ends up transforming into this kind of fierce survivor. And her journey throughout the movie is just about overcoming this trauma and embracing that primal strength in the face of just the unimaginable. So yeah, she's definitely one of my you know favorite horror characters, not just Final Girls, but horror characters of the 2000s. Um, and then Juno, who's played by Natalie Mendoza, she's kind of a complex character who's just driven by adrenaline and this desire to just kind of prove herself. Her she has this recklessness about her though, and then because she's hiding this secret, um, from Sarah about, and I think that's even harder for her at that point because now Sarah's husband is dead, and so she's living with this betrayal, and I think that's really central to the whole plot's conflict in this. Um, and then Beth, who's played by Alex Reed, she's kind of the voice of reason in all this, and and has that compassion for everybody within the group. Um, so, and then she's aware of like that secret and stuff that Juno was holding from Sarah. So, in a sense, Juno wasn't the only one that was betraying Sarah with that secret. If their other friends knew about it as well. That's just my opinion, though. Um, but yeah, Beth's death in this, her is it's pretty brutal. It's and just the final moments that she has with Sarah are pretty emotionally devastating. I mean, especially because she's just asking for that mercy killing, and yeah, it's pretty wild. Um, then there's Sam and Rebecca, who's played by Mayanna Burning and Saskia Mulder. They're just they're these girls are sisters, and like Sam is this kind of level-headed medical student, and Rebecca is more of a quieter, more observant member of the group. And but they're not like central characters in my opinion, but they're just kind of like along for the ride and just kind of seen as like disposable characters for these creatures to kill in my in my opinion. Um, and then Holly, of course, who's the newcomer. She's played by Nora Jane. I can't remember her last name. Nora Jane something. Anyway, but like I said, she's a newcomer. And new to this friends group. Just she kind of has this eagerness about her, but she's also kind of naive. But and that kind of makes her, uh, the best choice to be this early victim in the story. Um, and because after the stuff that happens with her and the crawlers, that's where it kind of highlights the dangers that are lurking in these caves. Um, and yeah, I mean, then you got to talk about the crawlers themselves. I mean, they're like blind or eyeless creatures, whatever they are. They look like the orcs from the Lord of the Rings, um, but they're just not. They're these creatures are not merely monsters, but just the symbol of kind of the film's theme, where they represent this kind of primal fear, and this like this descent, if you will, into just humanity's darkest depths, I guess, and just that struggle for survival and kind of a brutal, uncivilized world that they're living in. Um, so to talk about some of the most memorable moments for me in this movie, I mean, the car crash is definitely one of the most memorable things. It's very shocking, especially with it doesn't exactly show it, but it just kind of shows like the back of the car seat as the pole goes through her daughter's head and also kills her husband as well. It's just it's just a very kind of jarring depiction of the sudden unexpected tragedy. And just like I said, the moment that metal rod pierces that windshield and kills both Paul and Jessica, it's just a very like heartbreaking image that kind of sets the tone for the movie's kind of exploration of this grief and loss for the character of Sarah. Um, so then there's the moment when the cave is starting to cave in, just that collapse of the tunnel, which is kind of orchestrated by Juno, because she set off that explosive or whatever. It's this kind of moment of this kind of it's a turning point in the movie. It just because it's at that moment that the audience realizes that the group's fate has pretty much been sealed here, along with the cave being sealed, and so it just kind of establishes the stakes for for the group's desperate fight for survival. Um, and then you got Holly's death, which is and Beth, like the mercy killing with Beth. It's a very tough situation, and decision for Sarah to make in that moment. Everything about this movie is pretty memorable, to be honest with you. From all the different situations that each of the characters are placed in, and just the creatures themselves, and just especially the whole crawling through the blood pool, and just that whole transformation that Sarah goes through. So many memorable things about her, and then of course in the end when Sarah confronts Juno because of her betrayal, and she's pretty much letting her know she knows what's going down. She knows that she had this affair with her husband and all that. So yeah, so much going on here in this movie. And like I said, it's just it's one thing right after the other that really makes this such an impactful and memorable movie for me. Um, and the scent, it has left really a significant mark, I think, on the horror genre, particularly within like the survival horror and the creature feature subgenre that they were actively trying to bring back at this time. And it has that claustrophobic atmosphere as well, which is with these strong female leads and just kind of this unflinching, depiction of violence that had just influenced countless films and filmmakers since this came out. Um, and the film also shows this kind of traditional, final girl trope with Sarah's character as well. And then I think it's another reason why I love this movie so much because Sarah is not simply this damsel in distress who just overcomes all this adversity. She undergoes this profound transformation, just kind of going from like all this trauma that she went through just a year prior with losing her husband and her daughter, to having to go through this situation of just fighting for her life to in darkness of all places against these unknown creatures that and she's just kind of just putting this sense of like, if I don't fight for my life here, I'm not going to make it out here. So, and then you also throw the reveal of the betrayal from Juno, so that just adds even more depth to Sarah's character and her transformation. Um, it's an incredible movie. And it's example. It's an example of this like a landmark example, I guess, of this female led horror that goes beyond that simple empowerment. It explores these themes of friendship and betrayal and just being resilient through these female characters that are facing this extreme circumstance. And the movie's use of these confined spaces and this visual darkness just kind of really makes the film even more terrifying in that sense, and it makes it very immersive for the audience. So it's an insane experience. Um, and it also has, set a new standard for, I think, claustrophobic horror, and it's also inspired several films to explore that kind of psychological impact these limited spaces and these like tight spaces and all that. Um, but to talk about the crawlers and their design, it's very unique, I think, and it's very terrifying. It just to where they're like perfectly adapted to their environment. um, they kind of serve as this powerful like metaphor for just the dangers of isolation and the darkness that can reside within humanity. Um, and I guess in conclusion, I guess the descent, to me is it's brilliant. I think it is absolutely brilliant, and it's a terrifying horror film that just kind of transcends you know, typical genres, or subgenres in horror. It has this claustrophobic atmosphere, compelling characters, and just um, it's this exploration of just primal fear that have kind of cemented its status, I think, I think as a modern classic. And it's also, just influenced all kinds of other movies for years to come that was, but yet beyond its release. Um, but yeah, if you've never seen The Descent, highly recommend it. One of the best horror movies and just movies in general of the 2000s. Um, but guys, before I go into the next movie, I'm going to run to my kitchen real quick and get me something to drink. I will be right back. Just stay with me, guys. I'll be right back in less than a minute. Sorry about that, guys. I'm back now. I had to go grab me a 7 Up from the kitchen because I was dying of thirst. Mm. All right. That hit the spot. All right. So now back to the movies I was talking about. So I just finished talking about The Descent. So let's go ahead and talk about the next movie on this list, which is a movie I had never seen before. Uh, and this, after watching it, this might be one of my new favorite slashers of all time. Um, the girl in this is definitely up there as one of my favorite final girls of all time. Now, I mean, I absolutely love this movie. Um, I mean, this like I cannot wait to show this to my wife, my brother-in-law. I recommend this movie to anybody that's a horror fan. If you've not seen this, I beat myself up because this movie came out um in 2011, and I was like, and so that was 14 years ago. And I was like, why in the hell am I never seen this movie? But why have I never seen and watched this? I mean, I've heard countless people talk about this. I've heard friends talk about it. I mean, I've seen, like some of the people that are in the movie show up at conventions. Um, and it even has Barbara Crampton, who I love. I love Barbara Crampton, and she's in this. And I have no idea, guys, why I waited so long to watch this. But this is the 2011 masterpiece, in my opinion, masterpiece. You're next. This this movie is awesome. I mean, it's a smart, brutal, and at times surprisingly darkly funny in a sense, that that kind of takes on this home invasion subgenre that that really sabotages that expectation and delivers this really extremely thrilling movie. And like I talked about with the Descent, that whole idea of like, just going to a cave, getting lost and everything, trapped, and just having to fight to survive. Just something that could really, aside from the creatures and all that, but just that the rest of what I was talking about, like that's something that could really happen. That's when I get terrified the most in horror. And I think home invasion movies scare me more than anything when it comes to horror because I've always had that fear, for years of just like somebody breaking in my home and stuff. And that's so terrifying to me. Because, I've known of people that really happening to. And just to kind of like them have these really detailed descriptions of happening in these movies, um, movies like this movie and or The Strangers and or like the scenes in like these like revenge films like Class of 1984 when the punks break into the teacher's home and they um, do everything that they do to his wife. It's just shit like that to me is terrifying. And excuse me, sorry. But yeah, I mean that shit scares me to death. But this movie was directed by Adam Wingard. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But he is this kind of modern horror um director that was known for like his contributions for VHS and the ABCs of Death. And he also directed the more recent Godzilla versus Kong. And the screenplay for this movie was written by Simon Barrett, who is a frequent collaborator with Wingard. He's known more for his like sharp and witty dialogue, and it's kind of he has this knack for like twisting familiar horror tropes into um, you know kind of like taking something that you would typically think would happen in a horror movie, but he just kind of twists it and just into this kind of unexpected turn of events. You know what I mean? Um, so together, these guys, Wingard and Barrett, they kind of forged this unique style that's known for like this smart genre of of horror. Um, but the movie, it begins with this kind of prelude to the overall story, and it kind of sets this tone for the rest of the movie as well. Because there's this couple, it kicks right off with this couple of named Talia and Eric, and they're having sex, and so this the movie kicks off with this sex scene, and then but there's kind of this like lurking like dread with the as this is going on because afterwards, Eric discovers um, that Talia has been killed, and there's this chilling message kind of scrawled in blood on their window. It says, "You're next." Um, and before he can even react to it, there's this mass attacker that has this lamb mask on behind him that brutally murders him with this machete and kills him. Um, Hey, what's up, Jason? Glad to have you here. And you said have another sleepless night. Well, I'm just starting to talk about the movie You're Next from 2011. So, and this was the first time watch for me, man. So, hope you know, hope you stick with me and hear me ramble on about this movie. And I got a couple others. I'm gonna talk about this after this one as well. I got two more after this one, but yeah, like I said, that there's that prelude of the movie kind of opens, when it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the movie after these two people are murdered, and then the story, the main story centers around this family, the Davison family, um, who have gathered at their secluded vacation home in this like Missouri area, I guess, where they live, and for this like this family reunion, and Crispin Davison brings his girlfriend Erin to meet his kind of dysfunctional family, which includes his parents and his older brother Drake, and and his wife Kelly. And then his younger brother Felix, and Felix's girlfriend Z. And I think there's also there's another sister named Amy, and she has a boyfriend named Tyreek, who is played by Ty West. And the family dinner is kind of abruptly shattered, because so it starts, they start. Crispin and Drake, they end up having kind of this argument, and for some, I can't remember why. Tyreek that played by Ty West, he gets up and he like walks over by the window because I think he like sees something at the window, so he gets up to kind of go see if there's something out there, and that's when this crossbow bolt is fired through the window and it goes through his head and kills him. Um, so after this happens, it kind of just panic ensues as they realize that they're under attack, and so they attempt to call for help, and you know then so they're making all these attempts to call for help, and then that's thwarted by this kind of this cell phone jammer, and Felix tells them about it because he's aware of them. He says you can give like $30 on the internet or something, and and Amy, who just in kind of this desperate attempt to find assistance, she's like, nobody ever gives me credit. I can run 3 miles in 23 minutes or whatever she says. So she takes off her shoes. She's barefoot. And she's going to try to run as fast as she can outside. But as soon as she runs out, she's decapitated by like this big wire that's stretched across, the outside of the front door. Um, so the matriarch of this family, which is played by Barbara Crampton, she, after this happens to Amy, she freaks out, and she retreats to her bedroom, and um, but as she goes up there, she falls victim to another intruder who was this time wearing a fox mask, and kills her through the face with a machete, stabs her right through the face, and just leaves that same note like from the beginning of the movie, the "Your Next" message scrawled in blood on the wall. Um, oh, Jason, you said you met Sharni Vincent, who plays Aaron. Yeah, I was just talking to my buddy Nathan, who runs the Horror Hound Weekend convention earlier, and I was telling him how I just watched this movie, and now I absolutely love it. I'm obsessed with it now. And I was like, has Sharni Vinson ever done a convention? And apparently, she did a Horror Hound years ago that I was at, but I had not seen this movie at the time, so I guess I didn't care because I didn't know who they were. But now, like, I'm kicking myself for that too because I would love to meet her now. Like, she has, at this point, like I said, become one of my favorite final girls now, and this movie rules. I mean, it absolutely rules. Um, but anyway, after Barbara Crampton, the mother of the family, is killed, and the your next message is scrawled in blood again on the wall. Um, the character Kelly, which is I believe it was um, Drake's wife, I believe. So she runs to this neighboring house that's kind of occupied by Eric, the guy from the beginning of the movie, played by Larry Fessenden. Um, just only kind of discover his body's sitting there on the couch, but he's dead, and it's a lifeless body. So she at this point is brutally murdered by the landmass killer, who slams an axe right into her head. And in the scene, there's this song from the '80s. I guess it's from the '80s playing. It's something. In your eyes or something. But the thing, it's so fun because it's so like creepy to go along with that scene. Like really it gave me chill bumps while I was watching that, and it ties into her to Kelly's death because when he slams that axe into her head, the blade goes right in across her eye. So it's very fitting for that song to be playing during her death. Um, but Crispin Davison, who is Aaron's boyfriend in this, he tries to intend to fetch help as well. So he goes outside and he disappears for a long period of the movie. So we don't really know what happens to him for a long time in the movie. But after he ventures outside, Aaron is attacked by this tiger mask killer. But she unexpectedly is this absolute badass who had been taught all these survival skills by her father, who was like convinced that the world was going to run out of resources and all that. So he just kind of taught her how to survive. So you know, and Crispin, I guess he didn't expect that from her when he got with her, but like so she fights back with this tiger mask killer, with just this incredible ferocity. I mean, and just beats the shit out of him and stabs his arm and then crushes his like kneecap and or not the knee, she hits his knee and then knocks him down and then she just like pulverizes the shit out of his head with that meat tenderizer. And I mean, it's brutal and it's badass. And so like I mean, she just absolutely goes ape shit on him with it, and it's killer. I love it. But beyond this, Paul, who's searching the house, and Paul is the father figure of the family, and so he's like searching the house, and he ends up finding like this bottle of piss and stuff in this closet. There's like sleeping bags and food wrappers, and like I said, that bottle of piss, and so he just kind of figures out at this point, like, the killers have been hiding in their house for some time now, and just kind of been watching them. So he ends up sharing, this information with Felix and Z. Just kind of implying that this attack has been targeted for a while and not just some random act of violence. So at that moment, when he reveals that information to him, the fox mask killer kind of comes up quietly behind him and slits Paul's throat. And it's after he's killed, it's kind of like no reaction. It's like a very like no emotion reaction from Felix and Z, and that's when like you understand like, oh my god, they're involved with this. So it's a very big twist right in the middle of the movie with Felix and Z, displaying that no emotion as they watch Paul die, and then Felix starts to kind of like um, bitch at the Fox mask killer, for killing his father in front of him, and just that whole twisted truth comes out about what Felix and Z have hired these guys, the Lamb, the Tiger, and the Fox mask killers, to murder his family and to claim their inheritance to get all this money from them. Um, so while this is happening, the Lamb mask killer finds the Tiger mask killer dead and becomes enraged. So, and then after that, he discovers that a wounded Drake who had been shot in the back with one of the crossbow bolts. Um, but then Eric comes up behind and stabs him with a screwdriver. So Aaron explains, then that she I think she's explained to Z, who she told that she grew up in like that survivalist compound with her father, where she learned like combat and survival skills. Um, so Felix, when Felix and Drake go down to like the basement, um, you know, Felix wants an even bigger inheritance, so he stabs the wounded Drake. He's already wounded with the crossbow bolt in his back. But then Felix stabs him like multiple times with multiple like, screwdrivers and ice picks and whatever kind of tools he can find down there in the basement. And it's just cold blooded shit, man. Like from Felix, and it's just at this point as a viewer, you're like rooting for this guy to be murdered in the most brutal possible way, and with them already establishing Aaron as this absolute badass, she's going to be the one that takes this motherfucker out. So anyway, Aaron, she finds herself constantly on the defensive here, and she has to jump through a window and out to the outside trying to escape the Fox mask killer. She injures her leg with a big, huge shard of glass going through her leg. She has to pull out. Um, then the Lamb mask killer, he's injured by one of Aaron's nail traps that she had made with all the nails to the board. It almost feels like a horror version of Home Alone at this point, but which makes it even more awesome. Um, but then Aaron, she has to hide behind this like curtain, and she overhears this argument between Felix and Z and the Fox and Lamb mask killers, revealing that the Lamb and Tiger are brothers. So then she ambushes the Lamb before stabbing shit out of him, um, and she realizes she can't outrun the Fox mask killer. So she sets this trap up at the front door with this axe and the rope and everything kind of set up. Another like Home Alone type trap. Um, and so then Fox is lured into the basement and killed by Aaron. So this leaves Z and Felix left, and they're still attempting to try to kill Aaron. But again, she fights back with them, and she ends up killing Felix. Was one of the most awesome kills in the movie with this stuffing this blender on top of his head and just like slicing his dome up. And then she just stabs Z right in the top of the head, right through it to the brain, with a knife, and she's killed every one of these sons of bitches, man. Like she just killed them all. I mean, and so then after this happens, another twist comes into play when Felix's cell phone rings and Aaron answers the call without speaking. And on the other end of the line is Crispin, her boyfriend, who is assuming that he's talking to Felix, and he reveals his involvement in this scheme to kill his family. So when Crispin comes into the house and he sees that Aaron has the phone and he now knows that she knows, he attempts to bribe her into staying quiet and, because, um, if she kills him and all that, she won't get anything and all this, blah, blah, blah. But, Aaron is absolutely disgusted. And I know me personally as a viewer of this, this was very like disgusting behavior on his part as well, and you're just kind of rooting for like just stab him, just kill him too, just fuck it, just kill him. And so, like I said, then you see like this kind of overall disgust come over her that no, that he would sacrifice his family for all this. So she kills him too, stabs him right in the neck with a steak knife. and um, right as this happens, a police officer finally arrives at the home, and seeing all this goes down, he shoots and injures Aaron right in like in the chest or on the shoulder, um, and so the cop is calling for backup and all that, and he tries to go into the house, and Aaron tries to holler at him and stop him from coming in, but that's when the axe door trap comes into play, kills the cop, and it goes to credits, and that is a absolutely awesome, fantastic horror movie, slasher movie, final girl movie. Um, just a masterpiece. I swear this movie is awesome. Um, and Sharni Vinson, like Jason said that he met Sharni Vinson. Um, so that's definitely cool. I'm jealous. I wish I had met her years ago when she was at Horror Hound, but at the time I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what this movie was. Um, but yeah, she plays the unforgettable character of Aaron, and, who is the film's hero, the final girl. She is just crucial to this story because she flips that whole damsel in distress trope on its head pretty much, and just her whole survivalist background makes her this resourceful, very smart, and just formidable like fighter. That makes her just this kind of proactive force against these killers. And the youngest brother here, the one that's organized all this, Felix Davison, played by Nicholas Tucci, um, he's the mastermind, behind these killings. He just kind of represents that kind of dark, um, representation of greed and resentment, within his own family. He just kind of makes him this kind of key player, in the plot's twist. Um, and Z, who is played by Wendy Glenn, she's Felix's girlfriend and his accomplice. And there's a scene in this is so like crazy weird, like because after we've already found out that Z and Felix are part of this, um, they go up into the mother's bedroom where that was played by Barbara Crampton, and her dead body is just laying there on this bed covered up. And Z pushes Felix onto the bed next to his dead mother, and she starts taking off her clothes, and she's like turned on by all this, and she wants to have sex with him right there by his dead mother. And I'm like, this is fucked up. This is really fucked up. but but Z, she just kind of embodies that whole cold and like calculating nature in a character, and it just really highlights that kind of moral decay at the heart of all this family drama. Um, and then AJ Bowen, who plays Crispin Davison in this, he's the boyfriend of Aaron, and his character just kind of adds this whole nother layer of betrayal, late into the film, and just the whole selfishness of it all to that story. Um, and he's not seen, like he's a huge part of like of the plot, but his character is not featured a whole lot throughout the entirety of the movie. And then you have Joe Swanberg, who played Drake Davison, who is Crispin and Felix's brother. And Drake is kind of this smart ass, always like trying to start trouble and stuff. So you kind of see that early when we were introduced to his character, and especially at the dinner table scene right before Ty West's character gets killed. He just kind of has a smugness about him, very competitive nature, and just very toxic as well, So, um, I think his death was one of the only predictable ones that I saw coming in the movie. So yeah, I wasn't too sad about it when it happened, even though it was still shocking that it was his own brother that killed him. Um, Hey, what's going on, Daniel? Glad to have you here, man. I seen you had some comments on here earlier, but I guess you were working or something. So um, I just assumed you had to go back to work. But yeah, glad to have you back in here, man. I just got a couple more after this one. I'm just kind of finishing up talking about your next right now. If you've never seen it, man, I when I do talk about these movies, I do talk about the entirety of the movie. I do give spoilers, so I apologize if you've never seen this before and you don't like spoilers. You can always go watch the movie and then come back and watch this video on replay. But anyway, yeah, thank you for being here, man. Um, let's see. Hold on, my stream just froze. What the hell? Give me 1 second, guys. All right, there we go. So sorry about that. But moving on to the next character, so we have Sarah Myers who plays Kelly Davison. And Kelly, she kind of serves as this initial like victim in the story, and just kind of highlights that vulnerability of the family before Aaron takes charge of everything in the movie. Um, and then we got Amy Simons, who plays Amy Davison. And Amy's death with the wire slicing her throat and everything, it kind of just sets this movie into motion of all the escalating violence and just kind of emphasizes that threat that the family's facing. And of course, Ty West. It's a really short role, but I love Ty West, and Larry Fessenden, who's also in this in the beginning of this. Him and Ty West, worked together several times on Ty West's own films like House of the Devil and The Innkeepers. Um, but Ty West, while he's not part of the film crew in this, he just has this little small role as part of the cast, as to kind of illustrate that quick and shocking death that establishes this it's immediate and brutal danger for the family. So, and Ty West is going to be at Horror Hound in a couple weeks. So I'm considering meeting him because, he has a lot of different things that he's, been in or worked on that I really like. He was, he worked on the House of the Devil, Innkeepers, X, Pearl, Maxine, just several things. He was in an acting role in Your Next. So there's several things to choose from because of Ty West. I think you know, he's one of the next huge big names in filmmaking. He's already had several you know hugely successful movies come out. So like, yeah, I'm definitely going to be considering maybe trying to meet him. He's going to be at a couple shows that I'm going to this year. So if I don't meet him at Horror Hound, I'll meet him at one of the later shows later in the year. But yeah, definitely, if you've never seen any of Ty West's stuff, definitely check his stuff out. Um, Next, we have Rob Moran as Paul Davison. Paul, one of the most memorable things with his character, and this is his discovery of that killer's hiding place in the closet that kind of helps expose, what's going on with Felix and being a part of, hiring these guys to come and do all this shit to the family. It just kind of adds, that layer of like investigation to this survival horror. So, while he's not much in the, his that scene with him really just it kind of adds a layer, and it's really important to the plot. And then of course you got Barbara Crampton. I have to mention, even though she's barely in the movie because she's one of the first few deaths of the movie. Um, I have to talk about because I love Barbara Crampton. I mean, I have had a huge crush on Barbara Crampton for as long as I can remember. And she's fantastic. Just her, even though it's a short time in the film, she's fantastic in this movie. And just the whole like stabbing through her face with the machete, it really kind of highlights that indiscriminate nature of these attacks from these killers is that they don't care who you are, what you represent. that you're just going to die. Um, and then you got the killers, the fox, the lamb, and the tiger mask killers. These guys, I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. They're there, they're hired by Felix and Z to come and take care of this family of his, kill everybody in his family, to just so he can get all that inheritance money, and he's promised them like $200,000 each for doing this. And then when the one killer that's one of the two brothers gets killed, then his share is supposed goes to his brother. So I mean, there's all kinds of different things going on in this movie. With there's so many different characters, as I just talked about. Most of them. So yeah, it's kind of there's several different stories to follow within this, but if you kind of keep up, I mean, it's a hell of a ride. I mean, it's a hell of a movie. I recommend this to anybody. Um, but it has this several memorable moments for me as well. From the opening with Larry Fessenden, and Caitlin Shield as the Harson. It just kind of establishes this sense of creeping dread and just foreshadows that all that violence that's to come in the movie. It just really sets that stage for that whole home invasion thing. Um, then it's a Jason with the harpoon gun in library. LOL horror movie clue game. I'd play that. LOL. Yeah, like I'd play a horror icon themed Clue game for sure. I love playing Clue. Speaking of Clue, I don't know if you heard me talking about it or not on here, Daniel, but I just went to Lexington Comic Con yesterday and met William Sadler from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, who played Death, and they play Clue in that game, and like because that was always one of my favorite lines in it, where he's like he says it was kind of mustard in the study with the candlestick, and Bill and Ted's like, it was Professor Plum, dude, and he goes, I said Plum, and I quoted that with him. I quoted that with William Sadler, and he loved it. He's like, wow, he's like that. He said that was my favorite line from the movie, so he was like quoting stuff back with me, and that was fun. But yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, Daniel. Um, but yeah, aside from the opening and everything from of the movie, then there's just that first attack on the Davison family, and then killing Tyreek, who's played by Ty West. That scene is really shocking and chaotic. It just kind of immediately plunges the audience of the movie into this kind of brutal reality of the situation, and it just it shatters that normalcy of the family gathering, and just establishes these killers as a very serious threat. And then just Aaron, the absolute badass in this movie, just killing every one of these motherfuckers. Aaron just has this kind of unexpected display of combat skills, and just is just is a major turning point in the movie, just because where she grew up having this resourcefulness and just this strategic thinking is just and taking down all of these guys are it's just both thrilling and just kind of darkly comedic, because like oh shit, like because Crispin, who is revealed in the twist of the movie that he was involved with as well. It's her boyfriend, and it's just comedic in a way that like he got this girl not really knowing got with this girl not really knowing anything about her, and he was using her just as a witness to all of this, so he would be able to inherit all that money after the rest of his family was killed. But what's comedic about that is that he had no idea she was going to be this strategic badass that was just like knew every which way from dusk till dawn to whip these guys' asses and kill them in every like creative way that she could think of. Or she just probably watched Home Alone a lot and like learned how to make all these traps. I mean, I don't. It's just it's very comedic if you think about it, but that makes it so much more awesome personally for me. Um, And then of course, there's the reveal of just like Felix and Z being associated with the killers, and then and Crispin at the end as well, working with Felix. And just it's that final gut punch when you find out Crispin is involved. It just kind of adds that another layer of that deception, and highlights that the depths of like the family's dysfunction. And that whole betrayal from him solidifies Aaron's kind of isolation in this situation, and forces her to make this difficult choice to just to take him out as well. And of course, the ending of the movie, because when she sets up that door trap, earlier on with the axe and everything, that that's coming. You're waiting for that. You keep waiting. And you after she's taken out everybody, and the door trap didn't get used, you're like, oh shit, well, that was a waste. But then, the cop comes in, shoots her in the shoulder, then he tries to walk in the house after he shot her from through the window outside. And then that's when the door trap comes into play. And the axe slams into the cop, and that's the end of the movie. Yeah, I mean, everything about this to me is memorable and awesome, and just, um, you know, if you're like me, that waited 14 years to watch this movie, why? Why'd you do that? I mean, because like I said, I'm kicking myself because this movie was fucking awesome. No joke. It was killer. I love it. Um, and and even though this was my first watch of this movie, I know a lot of horror fans, like I said, love this movie, and it's been talked about, several times over the years. So, I think it's clear that Your Next has had already a significant impact on the horror genre, particularly within the slasher and home invasion subgenres. Um, and its success kind of lies within that continuing strong female lead aspect that horror fans seem to love so much as well. Because Aaron, the character of Aaron, is really a far cry from that typical screaming victim, because her competence and just that proactiveness is really an inspiration to these other films that create more and more empowered and capable female leads. Um, and just the film itself, kind of seemingly blends these elements of like slasher and home invasion and dark comedy. Um, and I think that demonstrates kind of the potential for all these like hybrid horror films. And That's something that I've always really enjoyed is when these horror films take several different elements like that and just mix them all together. Especially ones that I'm interested in because I've mentioned several times like I love horror, I love comedy. When you mix those two together, it just works. It's I look at movies like that. If they're good, they get the story works and everything, and they're not dumb or anything. Those I look at those movies like masterpieces in my own eyes because of but there's definitely movies out there that are horror comedies that are not the greatest thing in the world that I don't really care for. But but this one is not in that category because I think this one's absolutely awesome. I don't have a bad thing to say about this one. Um, and if you look at the practical effects and the gore in this one, and this movie is really reliant on the practical effects and just that very visual gore that we see that provides this raw and impactful like viewing experience. And I think that kind of influenced other horror films that are more modern films to embrace that practical effects over that CGI bullshit. Um, and I'll always appreciate, practical effects over CGI. I mean, CGI can work, if it's done well enough, but still, I just feel like it's lazy overall. I feel like CGI, unless it's super lazy because, and that's why I appreciate practical effects more because you got all of these effects guys who are really putting in the work, and when you're using to me when you're using CGI for your effects in movies, it's a slap in the face to those guys like Lon Chaney Senior, like Tom Savini, to like Rick Baker, to Stan Winston, And and some of those guys were also are guilty of using CGI, but still, practical effects will always be something that will be close to their hearts when it comes to filmmaking. I believe. Um, Daniel said, I don't know if you've watched that show, True Detective. Holy shit. The first season and the last season are the best ones. If you're a horror fan with a twist, yeah, that's what I got on my list, man. I've heard a lot of my friends talk about that show, and I've got it on my watch list on one of those streaming services. I think it's on like Max or something. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm definitely going to have to get into soon because I've heard so many good things about it. And yeah, just thanks for reminding me of that too, man. Because I may actually end up after I get done with this, or I don't know. It's 12:31 right now, so I'm gonna try to kind of tie this together maybe within the next hour or so. Um, because I do have work tomorrow. But yeah, I'm gonna maybe start True Detective tomorrow, yeah, if I remember to do it. um, but for your next, I also want to talk about the whole inspiration that I saw in it for the Wyatt family in the WWE. So, if you're not a wrestling fan, there was this guy named Bray Wyatt, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And his character in WWE was portrayed as like this evil cult leader who believed himself to be more monster than human, with his character kind of drawing comparisons to Charles Manson and like this other guy from the 90s named Waylon Mercy, as well as this character Max Cady from the remake of Cape Fear in the 90s with Robert De Niro. But what this has to do with your next is that there was these sheep masks that members of the White family, Eric Rowan and Braun Strowman, would wear, and it was just like the lamb mask, not sheep mask, but the lamb mask they wore was much like the lamb mask from Your Next. And while that may not be directly tied to Your Next, it's just especially similar to the lamb mask, that they used in the movie, and it's made up in my mind that they definitely drew inspiration from Your Next in that aspect. Um, oh, you're nerding out over that Texas Chainsaw Massacre poster behind me. Yeah, it's signed by Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, Ed Neal, who's Hitchhiker, John Dugan, who played Grandpa, and Marilyn Burns, who played Sally. I got majority of those autographs from the first convention I ever went to back in 2009. So yeah. Um, but let's see. So your next is this kind of this modern horror classic. I think that really reinvents a lot of these familiar tropes with a fresh perspective, and it just really delivers a really thrilling and unforgettable cinematic experience. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This is a movie that I will watch countless times. It's a must see, I think, for any horror fan that's just kind of looking for a smart, suspenseful, and really a bloody good time in a movie. So yeah, check it out as soon as possible if you've never seen it. Um, so to move on now, the next movie on here that I want to talk about is a movie I have seen before, and I really enjoy this movie because it's kind of a fresh take on, and it kind of blurs the lines between who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. And that's Don't Breathe from 2016. So it really takes all these different genre tropes and kind of cleverly flips them. And it kind of creates this whole little claustrophobic and kind of experience that keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time while you're watching this movie. Um, it's definitely unforgettable. I think yeah, thanks to its like high tension and the whole disturbing premise. So this film was directed by Fede Alvarez, who is known for Evil Dead 2013, um, and his direction in Don't Breathe is really a key to the film's success because he showcases like his ability to really to just to build suspense and just that builds this claustrophobic type of environment that really makes the viewer feel like they are in this house with this blind guy and these robbers. And so the story it focuses on these three young, like, you know, probably like young adults, teenagers going into adulthood, and they're like there's a kind of like they're like delinquents, I guess you could call them. So there's this chick named Rocky, and her friend Alex, and this guy named they call Money. And I don't know if like Money is supposed to be like Rocky's boyfriend or if he's just like another friend or what. But anyway, um, they're looking for this way out of their lives. It just kind of because they all kind of live shitty lives in this town, so they're looking for a way out of this town. And so Rocky, she dreams of escaping her abusive home with her younger sister Diddy to California. Um, so to fund this escape, she and these other two guys have to break into these houses and steal things. Um, so they end up finding out about this guy named Norman Nordstrom, who is this Gulf War veteran who's living alone in this neighborhood, and they find out that he reportedly has $300,000 in cash from this settlement that was received after this young woman Cindy Roberts uh, accidentally killed his daughter in this car accident. So they come up with this plan to try to rob him, and they think that where him being blind and all will make it an easy target. So they stake out his house, and when they first see him, that's when they determine like, oh, he's blind. So they're like, this is going to be easy money or whatever. Um, but he also has this big, huge Rottweiler dog, and they end up having to drug that Rottweiler to just to try to break into the house during the night while Nordstrom is asleep. So the guy that's named Money, he ends up shooting the locks off the basement door because he assumes this is where he that the guy might be holding all the money. But when he does this wakes up Nordstrom, and so Nordstrom he overpowers Money when he comes through there, and he takes the gun from him and kills Money. And as Rocky, is standing there watching this happening, um, she watches Nordstrom open up this safe. So Alex, the other guy that's Rocky's friend, Alex and Rocky, they end up kind of evading Nordstrom through this whole ordeal, and then they go into the basement, and that's where they discover Cindy Roberts is in this basement. This girl that killed Nordstrom's daughter, and she's all down. She's down there bound and gagged, and she's got. It looks like she's pregnant. So they try to free her, but when they try to escape, Nordstrom comes down there, and he accidentally shoots and kills Cindy. Um, so they knock him out, and they try to run out upstairs. Um, so when they get back upstairs and they escape, the dog is back awake now. They escape the dog, and then Rocky tries to escape through this vent, but Alex is then knocked out by falling out of this window by the dog onto this like skylight window. So once he goes through that, he's stabbed by Nordstrom, and then Rocky is then captured by Nordstrom when she's up in the vents. Um, so Rocky then wakes up, all restrained after she's captured, and she's locked. she's chained up like much how Cindy was down in the basement. And then that's when Nordstrom reveals that Cindy was pregnant with his child as a replacement for his daughter that was killed. So he plans to artificially inseminate Rocky now with using a turkey baster. So he like fills up this turkey baster with semen, and it's like fucking leaking and everything. It's gross as shit. But he's going to use this to impregnate Rocky, and he promises to let her go after she has the baby. So right before he tries to put up the turkey baster inside her and inseminate her, uh, Alex returns and saves Rocky, and just they knock out Nordstrom and then they handcuff him, and Rocky takes the turkey baster full of semen and just shoves it into Nordstrom's mouth, and it's like, how's it taste? so, so I mean, it's a sense of a little bit of comedy there, but I mean, this is still a very serious situation that they're dealing with. But as they're when Alex and Rocky are trying to, run back up and escape out of the house, Nordstrom, breaks free from downstairs, gets back up there, and shoots and kills Alex before they can escape out the door. Rocky does escape initially, and but Nordstrom sends the dog out after her, uh, and she then gets recaptured by Nordstrom, and she confuses him when they get back to the house by setting off the alarm system, and this causes his like senses, his hearing senses to go into like where he can't handle it. So not only is he having trouble hearing now because of the alarm system, but he's also blind. Um, so then Rocky beats him with this crowbar before pushing him into the basement. And as he falls into the basement, he shoots himself, falling to the ground, and Rocky escapes. So beyond this, after Rocky escapes, her and her little sister Diddy, they're on their way to California to escape this whole hellish nightmare. And Nordstrom is, there's this news report on TV talking about what happened, and they find out that Nordstrom is still alive. He's recovering in the hospital, and the news says that he killed two intruders in self-defense. So he's getting away with all this shit, that just happened in the movie. And but then Rocky and Diddy board this train to Los Angeles to get start their new life. Um, Hey, Greg. Hey, I appreciate you being here, man. Yeah, I hope all is well. Definitely, man. I was just telling everybody earlier in the video that went to Lexington Comic Con this weekend, so I had a really good time there. And but if you missed that, man, you can just once this video is done, you can go back because I talk about all that at the beginning of this video. I showed some pictures and stuff of people that I met while at the convention, and yeah, but man, definitely all is well, and just appreciate you being here, man. Um, but yeah, uh, to talk about a little closer look at some of the main characters for Don't Breathe. Um, Norman Nordstrom, who is the blind man, he's played by Stephen Lang. He's just kind of presented, as this vulnerable victim, but then the script is kind of flipped because it's quickly revealed that he himself is capable of all this extreme violence and all this terrible things that he's doing, like having this girl chained up down in his basement, and he's inseminating, he's artificially inseminated her, and he's trying to get her pregnant to have his new child. So yeah, so the guy that was initially portrayed as a victim is actually the monster in all this. Um, Daniel, you say you wonder if they'll make a fucked up horror movie about Diddy. I hope so. That'd be killer. I'd watch it as long as Diddy gets brutally murdered at the end. Fuck that guy, man. Um, but yeah, so to the moving on to Rocky, who's played by Jane Levy, and like I said, Fede Alvarez, who did the 2013 Evil Dead. Jane Levy was also in that one in that movie as well. But and she's again back as the main lead in this, and also seen as the final girl for this story. And she's just a person that wants to escape her really bad life and protect her sister. And so even though like she's breaking in these houses and stealing things and stuff, the story that's told here really makes you feel sympathetic for her just due to her circumstances because of her having this abusive home life with her mother and all that. Um, and then you got Alex, who's played by Dylan Minnette. I think he was this guy, if I'm not mistaken. He was in that last Scream movie that came out, Scream 6. Where he played like the son of Marley Shelton's character. I think that's the same guy. But anyway, in this one, he plays Alex. He's Rocky's friend, and he's he it kind of implies that he is a thing for her, and because she's leaving, wanting to leave that town and stuff. That's the reason he wants to leave. He wants to go with her and all that. Um, and he's kind of his character in this kind of provides like a moral compass because once they go to do like the job at the Nordstrom's house, he's not comfortable with it at all. So yeah, like I said, he kind of tries to talk her out of it and everything, but she's like, I have to do it and all this, blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean, but and it just kind of makes it even more upsetting when his fate kind of comes into play towards the end of the movie and what happens to him. So you feel very sorry for his character in that sense. Um, and then you got Money, who's played by Daniel Zavato. Again, I don't know if he was like supposed to be like Rocky's boyfriend, or he was just another close friend, or whatever he was. But he was kind of the instigator of all these robberies and these things that were breaking in these houses and stuff. Um, so, but once he is killed in the movie, it's very sudden and unexpected, and just it's at that point it really establishes this kind of danger and unpredictability of the Nordstrom character. He's because he and Money is not someone um, that's very smart, and he thinks that he can outsmart Nordstrom in this situation, but he quickly you fucked around and found out, if so to speak. But next, the whole basement discovery is another memorable moment in this with the that discovery of Cindy Roberts in the basement. And that's a major turning point because this was when they were researching about this guy. They had found out that she accidentally killed Nordstrom's daughter. So when it's revealed that he is holding her hostage in his basement, that's just where there's a huge major turning point in the movie, and it just kind of reveals that darkness of Nordstrom and this psycho mentality he has. It just kind of shifts the whole dynamic of like and blurs the lines between good and evil. Um, and the insemination attempt is just very disturbing. And I remember when I was initially watching this, I was like, "Holy shit, this is so weird and gross." Because like when it has this close up shot of the turkey baster with just semen dripping out of the turkey baster. I'm like, I was like, is that necessary? But but anyway, I mean, it kind of it was in a way it was necessary because it just kind of adds more tension and dread to the scene. So, but yeah, that's just very wild plot twist with that. And then of course, the final confrontation between Rocky and Nordstrom, where she kind of transforms into this final girl that this and just and she's doing whatever she can to survive this situation. Um, you know, even by using like his Nordstrom's own environment against him. So it's a very triumphant moment, I guess, of survival, and you know it leaves you with a good moment, like like a sigh of relief. But of course, there's always a twist in these movies, and in the very end, it's like I said, it's revealed on the news report that Nordstrom's still alive, and he got away with it because they were just looking at it as a home invasion, and he just killed those Alex and Money out of self defense. Um, but the movie itself, it really challenged the whole traditional home invasion narrative. And, like I said, blurs the lines between the victim and the perpetrator. Um, and just that whole final girl like thing with Rocky, her that the whole character arc that she has in this story, it just really she just evolves from this kind of desperate thief to this um, resourceful survivor, I guess. And it's a great version of that whole final girl trope, I think, because she isn't just this passive victim, but she fights back and uses her wits to survive. But I guess I will go ahead and because it's getting pretty late. It's about 9 minutes now till 1, so it's 12:51 a.m. here where I am. I got one more movie to talk about. This is the second movie in this video that I had never watched before, and this one came out in 2019, so it's only about 6 years old. But this is another movie I absolutely loved because this movie definitely blends horror and comedy together. And it has one of my current favorite actresses in it as well, Samara Weaving. And this is the 2019 release, Ready or Not. Um, so, like I said, this is a very darkly comedic horror thriller that just kind of cleverly like skewers this rich family while not just family but just kind of like the whole rich mentality while delivering these like genuine scares and you know satisfying, just like blood soaked awesomeness. I don't know how to even describe it. I mean, this movie really does. It's really killer. I love it. Um, and it's a really I think this is a movie that will stay with me because this is another movie like Your Next that I will probably watch multiple times. I mean, after the movie, I was telling my wife Candace about it, and I was like, I really wish me and you and watch this movie initially together, but I said I have to show this movie to you at some point, and to your brother as well because I mean this is another one of those movies that I absolutely loved, and I recommend it to anybody, and not just for like its shocking moments or anything, but also just because that has that sharp wit and all the characters in this are great too. I mean I think every character in this is absolutely awesome. Um, so this movie was directed by this filmmaking like collective, I guess you could call them, because it was a couple of different people, but they call themselves Radio Silence, and that's Matt. I think his name's Matt Olpen or something like that, and the other guy was Tyler Gillett, I think is his name. So I'm not super familiar with these guys, but from what I've seen from this movie, I'm definitely going to be looking more into their work. Um, so when after I watched this movie, I did a bit of a little research, and it said so they said they were known for their work in the horror anthology films VHS, which I've seen the VHS movies, but I didn't know that these guys were actually involved. Um, and it said they were also involved on Southbound, which I'm not sure what Southbound is, but so I'll have to look into that as well. Um, but they brought this kind of distinct blend of horror and humor and just suspense to this movie. Um, and their direction in this kind of keeps the pace of the movie very frantic, with the tensions high and just all the gore in the movie, just all while like maintaining this kind of whole tone that makes the film feel refreshingly original. Um, so the origins of this story lie with the writers named Guy Busick and Christopher Murphy, who kind of put together this insane, premise and just kind of expertly weave this kind of social commentary into the movie as well. Um, and the this movie starts off like 30 years early to what the main story is the movie. So it's kind of this prologue that really sets the tone. And there's this young boy named Daniel Ladomas, and he witnesses this violent murder of this lady. I think I can't remember if it's his aunt or who's it, but her name was Helene, and so he witnesses the violent murder of her husband Charles, and it's being orchestrated by his own family. Um, just during this kind of this ritual of a game that they play of hide and seek. So fast forward 30 years later, Alex Ladamus, who is the heir to the Ladamus family game's fortune, is marrying this girl named Grace, who's played by Samara Weaving. And she's just a woman from this kind of humble background with a history and kind of foster care system and all that. And so on the surface, everything kind of seems ideal for them, but behind this kind of facade of the Ladamus mansion kind of lies this dark family secret that we'll soon find out about. Um, so they end up, having the wedding at the mansion and all that. And after the wedding, Grace is informed of this bizarre tradition that the family has, where she's a new member of the family. She has to draw this card from this little antique puzzle box at midnight. And so the card that she pulls will determine the game that the family will play. But unfortunately, Grace draws the dreaded hide and seek card. And initially, she just believes this is just a silly family tradition and they're just playing some kind of, you know, a game of hide and seek. Um, However, Alex, ends up revealing the horrifying truth to her, and that someone draws the hide and seek card. The Ladamus family must hunt that person down and ritually sacrifice them before dawn, or the family will face dire consequences, possibly death. Um, so the last person who drew this card was the guy we see in the prologue of the film, Charles, which is Helene's husband, who ended up meeting his death as well. Um, but once the game starts, the mansion is locked down, and the Ladamuses arm themselves with all these different antique weapons, crossbows and axes, and even like I think one of them had like a nail studded bat or something. I can't remember. But but Alex, who was riddled with like guilt and kind of conflicted loyalties, to both um, his wife and the family, they he initially tries to help Grace escape, and just knowing of his family's this deadly tradition that they have. Um, so as the night goes on, into this kind of chaos and bloody game of cat and mouse, Grace is having to fight for her survival, and she uncovers like the true depths of the Ladamus family and the lengths which they'll go through to protect their legacy. So throughout that night, the Ladamuses are proven that they're on this they're sticking to this murderous task, and Emily accidentally kills multiple of the maids, mistaking them for Grace. So and there's a and to see the comedy and all that, I mean, you just have to see how the dialogue that's associated with those scenes takes place, because it's kind of a running joke in the movie because all these maids. they're all trying the family's all trying to kill Grace, but all these like the help in the mansion are the ones that keeps getting killed. Um, so this incompetence of the family only adds to like the dark humor of the movie as well. And but Grace, on the other hand, she kind of proves surprisingly resourceful and resilient herself because she just goes through this typical final girl transformation from this naive bride into this really hardened person. This is a survivor and all this, um, and each failed attempt by the Ladamuses to try to kill Grace just kind of only reinforces her determination to make it to Dawn, um, to beat them at this game. So Daniel, who is disillusioned with like, his family's traditions, he briefly tries to aid Grace in this game, uh, only to be betrayed by his own wife. And the butler Stevens, he ends up becoming this kind of unexpected obstacle for Grace as well. So as the night progresses, all these there's alliances that are shifting left and right. Secrets are kind of revealed. About the family and the mansion is just becoming soaked in blood all over the place. Um, but finally, as dawn approaches at the end, the family prepares to try to complete this ritual with Grace. But Grace, and Daniel, they or not Grace, but yeah, Daniel had poisoned um, all this like sacrificial like blood or whatever it was in that cup that they were drinking. Um, so he again tries to help Grace escape, and they fought. She's fought tooth and nail, and she manages to break free. So once the rising sun comes up, it triggers this curse that they keep alluding to throughout the movie, and the Ladamuses begin to explode. Every one of them are exploding in this kind of gory fashion, and Alex, who is driven to the edge at this point, attempts to sacrifice Grace himself, but then the curse claims him as well. Um, and just after that, the movie is ending as Grace walks out of the mansion. Just kind of as the um, there was a fire that got started at one point that I forgot to mention. But like so, this fire kind of spreads through the mansion, and she's walking out amongst all the mansion being on fire, and as the police and everybody are arriving, she's the sole survivor in all this. And when the police arrive and they ask her, what happened, all she says is in-laws, and that's the end. And I don't know. I would go more into this movie, but like I said, I'm trying to wrap this up as fast as I can, guys, because it is getting late, and I've been here longer than I thought I was going to be. But before I end all this, I just want to go into these characters a little bit. Grace, is played by Samara Weaving, who's one of my favorite actresses right now. Um, of course, she's the film's hero, and just that the final girl of the film. Her strength and resilience, in this movie, coupled with just kind of her outsider perspective, it really makes her the perfect foil to this Ladamus family tradition. Um, just her transformation from being really naive um, to just being this ultimate badass is really just the heart of this movie, and um, just all the comedy that comes with her character because she has these little one-liners here and there throughout the movie. But even though I've given you the premise of the movie, I didn't give everything away that happens in this. So I definitely, if you've never seen this, definitely check it out. Uh, I think people will love this movie. Um, Alex Ladamus, and this is played by Mark O'Brien. He is Grace's husband, and throughout the movie, he's torn between his love for her and this his family's dark legacy. And Alex's kind of internal conflict drives much of the story's tension. And when it comes to the end, that kind of ultimate betrayal um, that he presents is just a kind of a highlight for the whole meaning behind the power of like wealth of and and all that with his family. Um, but moving on, Tony Ladamus, who is the patriarch of this family, and he's the most like consistent believer in this family's curse. So he kind of represents like the this ruthless pursuit of like power and just this willingness to kind of sacrifice anything to maintain it because of this belief in this curse. And Becky Ladamus, who is Tony's wife, is played by Andy McDowell. And I haven't talked about Andy McDowell since I covered Groundhog Day earlier this year. So if you don't watch my Groundhog Day special, go watch that for sure. If you want me to hear, you want to hear me talk about more about Andy McDowell. Um, but like I said, she plays Tony's wife, and she's the mother to Alex, Daniel, and Emily. And her role is seemingly just like as the protector of the family and all this. And Daniel, who is Alex's brother, he's played by Adam Brody, and he's kind of like I said, he's disillusioned with his family, and just he's kind of wrestling with his conscience throughout this movie. And Daniel just kind of represents that potential for redemption within that just the corrupt family that he has. Though ultimately his efforts do fall short as he's killed by his own wife. Um, and then Emily, who is played by Melanie Scrofano, I think is her name, and and her husband Fitz Bradley, who's played by Christian Brune. Um, Emily has like a cocaine addiction in this, so they're constantly like showing that with her character throughout the movie, and just you combine that with like her husband Fitz's kind of incompetence and he's kind of a dumbass, and he's also one of the very many comedy aspects about this because like he one of the antique weapons they give him is this like antique crossbow, and so there's a scene where it shows him like sitting in a bathroom or something. He's on his phone watching a YouTube video of how to use this crossbow. So definitely it just kind of those two together kind of create this chaotic and hilarious dynamic between them that also furthers that dysfunction of the family that they're a part of. Um, and then, like I said, there's Charity who is played by Elise Levesque, and I don't know if she's related to Paul Levesque, Triple H or not, but very possible. But she is Daniel's wife in this, and she's a firm believer in the family's ways. So she gets along with them very well. Um, and Helene, who is Alex's aunt, and she's the one that's most committed to fulfilling the demands by this deal with that they have made or this curse that has been placed on their family. So. Um, Yeah, I mean, just like there's several other characters in this, but I just wanted to kind of cover like the family and Grace, the main people that kind of that drives this whole movie. Um, but and it has this movie has several unforgettable unforgettable moments. From the prologue to all the help getting massacred, to there's a scene where they uh, find all these dead bodies in this like goat pit out in this barn. Um, that's pretty wild, and just the whole battle between Grace and the butler Stevens. There's several different scenes between them where they're kind of having this um, brutal showdown, and it's just there's so much to really talk about this, and I apologize, guys, that I'm not going highly into depth, but like I said, it is getting late. And I'm getting pretty tired, so I'm just going to try to wrap this up here by just giving you my overall like final thoughts on it. Ready or Not, it just I think it really resonates from even though I've only seen it this one time, I think it really resonates with people because it really has this clever blend of horror and comedy, and it kind of gives a whole new meaning to the final girl trope in a way because it presents Grace as this flawed but ultimately like resourceful, empowered female hero, and I think the success for this movie kind of paves the way for other genre films that really tackle like themes of like class warfare and and this family dysfunctions and all that. Um, it just it really demonstrates that horror can be both entertaining, and funny and thought provoking, and just it really leaves this lasting impact on people and the genre itself, and just and it inspires filmmakers to kind of explore new ways to tell stories. And to this movie is really one of the most unique, like plots to a movie from any genre that I've ever seen. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this one because it just kind of took the slasher slash final girl aspect and just put a twist it like I've never seen been done in a film before. So yeah, it's very especially, very, very entertaining. Very, very entertaining, guys. And just I think the impact that it's had is really seen in its kind of clever use of that dark humor for sure. And yeah, this is a really a movie that's unforgettable to me, and it's one that I'll probably be watching many, many times. Um, but yeah, guys, that's it for my final girls week. I appreciate all of you that uh, was with me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed this part two of Final Girls Week. And if you did, if you haven't seen part one, please go back and watch that and watch all my other videos too while you're at it. Just have a whole marathon of CraterMania videos. I appreciate that. Uh, but really, in all seriousness, I appreciate all of you guys for checking out this video. Um, I want to thank everyone who either watched this live and was here in the chat. All you guys, Greg, Daniel, um, uh, I think Jonathan was in, or I'm sorry, Jonathan. Jason was in here earlier. I just appreciate you guys, chatting with me while I do this. I appreciate everybody that that's watching this on replay as well. So please drop me a comment below on what your favorite of these six movies that I covered tonight are, or who your favorite final girl is. And if you like this video, just please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Catch more videos from me like this one. And don't forget, click that bell too for any future notifications of videos that I'm going to be putting here on the channel. So, I guess with all that said, guys, I'm Crater. This is CraterMania. I love you guys, and have a good night.